When you have a chance, if you all can be seated, I would like to call to order the June 20, 2023 meeting of the West Palm Beach Planning Board. Madam Clerk, if you would kindly call the roll.
Andres Paradello. Let the record reflect that Andres is not in attendance. Deborah Rain.
Present.
Peter Pivko.
Here.
Stephen Mayans.
Here?
Carla Bryant.
Here.
Will Carante. Let the record reflect that he is not here. Patrick Mayfield. Let the record reflect that he is not here. And Jean Marcella Jr.
Present.
Thank you.
Right, next order of business is approval of the April 18, 2023 minutes. Has everyone had the opportunity to review them? Any changes or corrections? If not, I'm looking for a motion.
Move for. Second.
Motion and second for approval. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Next on the agenda is report of the planning staff. Ms. Van.
Angela Van, Planning and Zoning Administrator. Mr. Chair, at this time, staff will do their update at the next planning board meeting so that we can reserve this time to hear the cases.
Okay. All right, next on the agenda are remarks by the chairperson, of which I have none. So next is a declaration of ex parte communications, and let me begin by disclosing that I had a Zoom meeting with the applicant's representatives on planning board case number 1111BBB. In addition, I also received written arguments and a petition by residents in opposition to planning board case numbers 1934 and 1934A, which submissions have been delivered to the clerk and will be made part of the record of tonight's proceedings. None of these communications will prevent me from basing my decisions tonight solely upon the evidence presented this evening. As to the remaining agenda items, I have not had ex parte communications. I have not received written communications. I have not conducted an investigation. I have not made a site visit. I have not received expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made part of the record. Does anyone else have anything to disclose? Let me start with you, Deborah.
I would like to disclose that I did receive an email in opposition for planning board case 1934 and 1934A, and want that to be noted in the record for this evening. However, my decision will be based on the evidence presented this evening. And I have.
As to the other.
I have not had ex parte communications. I have not received written communications, and I have not conducted an investigation. I have not made a site visit. I have not received expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made part of the record.
Peter.
I also received communications via email for planning board case number 1934 and 1934A, and my decisions will be based on the evidence presented tonight. As to the matter of all the other items on the agenda, I have not had any ex parte communications. I have not received written communications. I have not conducted an investigation, nor have I made a site visit. I have not received expert opinions, and I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made part of the record.
Thank you so much. Carla.
I also received email communications from those parties opposing planning board case numbers 1934 and 1934A. I will base my decisions on the evidence provided this evening. With regard to the other planning board agenda items for tonight, I have not had ex parte communications. I have not received written communications. I have not conducted an investigation. I have not made a site visit. I have not received expert opinions, and I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made a part of the record.
Thank you so much, Jean.
In regards to case 1111BBB, In addition to being an alumnus of Palm Beach Atlantic, I do occasionally serve as an adjunct for the School of Business, and although that would not be a conflict and affect my decision-making, I would like to recuse myself from that particular case.
Okay.
As to all other matters, I have not had ex parte communications, I have not received written communications, I have not conducted an investigation, I have not made a site visit, and I have not received expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made part of the record. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next on our agenda are continued cases, of which there are none. That brings us then to Planning Board Case Number 1111 BBB and the swearing in of speakers. Would everyone who plans to speak or offer testimony this evening please stand up and raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be truthful? I do. You may be seated. Thank you. All right. On that case, if we can hear from Ms. Brinkman. I think we do, though. We have 1, 2, 3, 4.
Good evening, board members. For the record, Joni Brinkman with Urban Design Studio on behalf of the applicant, Palm Beach Atlantic University. I do have here with me today representatives from the university, from Leo Daly, who are the project architects, from Kimley Horn, our traffic, and also from Miller Legg, our civil and landscape architecture. So I know you have a long agenda, so let me get started here. We're before you today to request major site plan amendment to allow for the construction of the new business school on Olive Avenue. Most of you are familiar with the university. This slide represents the current master plan boundaries within the university, which is Okeechobee on the north, Flagler on the east, and Dixie on the west, and then Jefferson at the south end. This slide here represents the actual site plan that we are putting before you tonight. The north part of the site plan represents what is currently parking and will be accommodating the new business school. Gruber Avenue is within the site, which we'll speak to later on in regards to an abandonment that will be heard by the City Commission. Little bit about PBA. They were founded in 1968 in the city of West Palm Beach and are a faith-based private university. The current campus is about 19.11 acres in size, and they also have a satellite campus, which is their RAC, their athletics campus on Parker Avenue, which is about 76 acres. Satellite campuses in Orlando and also online programs. And Palm Beach Atlantic University, being a faith-based university, is a huge community partner with the city and have completed over 3.8 million hours of community service by their students and faculty. Again, the request before you today is a major amendment to the CSPD, the Community Service Plan Development, to allow the construction of a 6-story, 125,915 square foot new school of business. There is no increase in the current maximum full-time equivalent students associated with this request. It is simply providing more up-to-date facilities for their current student enrollment. Again, the City Commission will be hearing this later, but just to make sure you're aware that we are banning a portion of Gruber Place. It'll be incorporated into the overall CSPD. The abandonment is not required to receive a recommendation from you, but it will be considered by the City Commission, and there is condition of approval in our development order for the major amendment that requires that as well. This is just an illustrative site plan of the business school. You'll see where Wallingford Place and Gruger intersect now that will be maintained as right-of-way. A circular vehicular access area to the south of the school. The pedestrian environment is an urban environment, actually, that's being created along Olive Avenue in consistency with the setback requirements for the overall master plan. And then the quad, for lack of a better word, the green area to the left of the proposed business school. And then to the north of the school is the service area that'll service both the school as well as the library that's existing to the north. It's just, again, our master plan incorporating the Gruber Place abandonment into it in the business school now labeled as Building B. Leo Daly is the project architect. We wanted to show you some representative elevations and renderings of what the building would look like this is from Olive Avenue, a very civic-oriented type building. This actually has the donor's name on it, Marshall and Vera Lee Rinker Hall. Another rendering. And again, if you have any specific questions, we do have the project architects here. Again, there's no increase in number of students, so there's no increase in concurrency being required as part of this request. The abandonment of Wallingford was submitted as a separate application, and both a diversion analysis and the volumes were assessed on the impact of the abandonment, and no negative impacts are anticipated with that because that street was basically used by the university. There is also in your staff report, conditions of approval, one specific to the parking on site. Some of you will recall when we took the last parcels out, Lakeview Towers and Flagler, we accepted a development order condition that requires that we submit parking studies before each calendar school year. That parking study was prepared and reviewed by your staff, deemed acceptable that we are providing still the amount of parking required to support our demand. We do have off-site agreements with parking facilities, and there's this, again, the condition of approval requires us to notify the city when any of those agreements are amended. All 10 conditions in your staff report are being accepted by the applicant, and the city staff is recommending approval. We do have some letters of support from local players in the area. Obviously, the Frisbee Group is a major landowner in this vicinity, and we have their support, as well as the Norton and Family Church. Finally, as a longtime member and contributor to the City of West Palm Beach community, PBA is asking for your support in recommending this major amendment to the City Commission. That actually concludes my presentation. I know you do have a long agenda. I'm available for questions, as is our entire consultant team.
Thank you so much. Any questions of the applicant? Let me start with you, Gene.
No questions.
Oh, that's right. Forgive me. I forgot you weren't participating. My mistake. No? Peter?
None.
Deborah? All right, thank you so much. You may be seated. May we hear from the city?
Good evening, Linda Louise, Senior Planner for the record. So just to quickly recap, this is an application for a major amendment to the Palm Beach Atlantic University Community Service Plan Development and the construction of a new business school. The affected area within the CSPD boundary for the proposed development of the business school is located on the west side of Olive Avenue, just south of the university's Warren Library. The affected area is comprised of 2.43 acres. So the proposed School of Business building is comprised of 6 stories, approximately 98 feet in height, 125,915 square feet, and it comes with associated site improvements. The development of the new business school also requires the partial abandonment of the Gruber Place right-of-way, which is located within the affected area and identified in the yellow shaded area in this image. So the abandonment has been submitted as a separate application by the applicant, and it only requires City Commission approval. So as the applicant had noted, it does not require the Planning Board to take action on a vote tonight for the abandonment. But for reference purposes, staff does not object to the abandonment, as the abandonment does not negatively impact the street network in the surrounding area. So it's also important to note that this project does not request any waivers, and therefore it is consistent with our zoning code. So in terms of staff's findings and analysis, the project is consistent with the zoning and land development regulations, as noted in my previous slide. The project does not seek any waivers. It's also consistent with the development regulations for the Palm Beach Atlantic University Master Plan, which is provided to ensure consistency with the buildings within the plan development as well as in the immediate areas to the plan development. No negative impact to vehicular traffic will be created with this development of the proposed school. The new business school is expected to serve the campus population. And although there will be a net loss of 34 parking spaces for the entire plan development with a proposed project, the Palm Beach Atlantic University plan development will maintain sufficient parking on campus through its various on-site parking facilities, leased off-site parking facilities, and on-street parking. In terms of project review, the Plans and Plats Review Committee did review the project in November of last year, and the committee did deem the site plan technically sufficient to move forward to the public hearing stage, and the project has received traffic concurrency approval from the county's traffic division. Based on staff's findings and analysis, staff is recommending approval of Planning Board Case Number 1111 BBB with approvals, as staff has found that the application does comply with the amendment standards of our zoning code. So the conditions of approval are detailed in the staff report, and there's 10 of them, and as noted with the applicant's presentation, that the applicant has agreed to all 10 conditions noted in the staff report. And that concludes staff's presentation. If there are any questions.
Okay,
I'd
any
be more than
questions?
happy to
Deborah,
answer.
let me start with you. Any questions of staff?
I don't have any questions.
Peter? Carla? Okay, thank you so much. Would anyone from the public wish to be heard on this application? And if not, let's bring it back to the board. Does anyone have any concerns about this project?
No, I'd like to make a motion to.
Please.
Okay. I move that the planning board recommend to the city commission approval of planning board case number 1111 BBB, a request by Joni Brinkman of the Urban Design Studio on behalf of Palm Beach Atlantic University for a major amendment to the Palm Beach Atlantic University Community Services Plan Development to construct a 6-story, 125,915 square foot new School of Business building generally located on the west side of South Olive Avenue between Kings Court and Acacia Road. The motion is based upon the testimony presented at the hearing, along with the application submitted and the staff report, which constitute competent, substantial evidence. The planning board hereby makes findings of fact that the application complies with the required standards in section 9432A of the City of West Palm Beach zoning and land development regulations. In addition, this recommendation is made subject to the condition of approval contained in the staff report dated June 20th, 2023. I move that these conditions are necessary to ensure compliance with the purpose and intent of the zoning and land development regulations and consistency with the comprehensive plan of the City of West Palm Beach.
I'll second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? I just want to say, I think it's a wonderful project, and we wish the university success with it. So I'll call the question, unless there's any further comment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passage unanimously. Thank you so much. Next on our agenda is Planning Board Case Number 1947. May we hear from the applicant? That was pretty fast, 18 minutes. We have a second.
Okay, Linda Louis, Senior Planner for the record. Before the applicant begins with his presentation, I just wanted to inform the board members that Code Revision Case 2210, which is item number 2 in Section D of the agenda, will be presented with Planning Board Case number 1947 because both cases go hand in hand, and the Code Revision case must be voted upon first.
Thank you for reminding us that, because I don't think I would have remembered. Probably need to be reminded again before we do the vote.
Good evening. I'm Matt Wojciechowski with Schmid-Nichols, representing the applicant, the Cox Science Center. Today we have a request for the code revision that was previously mentioned, as well as, so that will be to the Community Service Plan Development section of the ordinance. as well as an application for a community service plan development for the Cox Science Center. So we have with us today a few of our consultants, if there are any questions, from Harvard Jolly, the architects on the project, as well as Simmons and White, myself. So we'll get going here. So just to familiarize everybody with, I'm sure we all know where the Science Center is, but it is located within Dreher Park, south of Southern Boulevard, north of Summit. So the existing Science Center is located within the park, as well as the existing Stiles Nicholson Center, or referred to as the STEM Center. So those are the two current buildings that are a part of the Science Center campus. A little bit about, I'll just run through this. So the Science Center has been in that location in various forms. It was established in the 1960s. There was an addition in the 70s, and as well as in 2010, which leaves us with the building that we know today. So it has been an educational and cultural institution here for over 60 years in the city. A little bit about the project overview. So to start, as part of this project, the first step was working with the Parks and Recreation Department and the city to expand the current lease area. So the lease was expanded. It was extended by 75 years with a 25-year option after that. So this area up here, the 2.0 acres that was just highlighted, that's one of the areas of the existing lease area where the Stiles Nicholson Center is. And the existing Science Center is located within that 4.82 acres section. The addition, or the revision to the lease, added 3.68 acres to the lease area, bringing it to a total of about 10.5 acres. So now the lease area is one contiguous site, and it's no longer separated with the park in between. So the idea was to create a little bit more of a cohesive campus design with this project. So I just highlighted, so you have Dreher Trail running down the center there. That will be included in the maintenance agreement as part of the lease agreement to maintain the parking that's within the lease area and directly north of it that is associated with this project. So to summarize the requests that we are going to be that we're requesting tonight, number one is the zoning text amendment that was previously mentioned. That is to the community services plan development section of the ordinance, and that will be to add cultural facilities to the list of eligible parking waivers, or eligible uses for parking waivers. So I'll have a little more detail on that on the next slide. And then following that, we're asking for a rezoning from recreation open space to community service, which will allow us to then rezone to the community service planned development zoning to establish this project. It will represent a 73,000 roughly square foot expansion of the existing center. And with that application, we do have 4 waivers that we're requesting with that community service plan development. So up on the screen, we'll see the proposed zoning text amendment, again, to add cultural facilities to the list of eligible uses that can apply for a parking waiver. You'll see it's been inserted there 3 times where each of the uses are listed, and this will allow the Science Center application to request a parking waiver of up to 30% of the required parking, and I will go into that in a little bit more detail on the next slide. So our request does meet all of the zoning text amendment standards. I'm not going to read through them. I'm sure staff will cover that as well, but we have addressed all of those questions. Our second request is, as I mentioned, the rezoning from recreation open space to community service plan development. The ordinance does not allow a community service plan development to be established without the community service zoning, so that's why it's sort of a 3-step process there. The site does have a community service future land use, which does support the community service zoning. And it has a maximum FAR of 1.0, which is, we're well under that for this project. And again, we meet all of the rezoning standards that are within the ordinance. So as part of the community service plan development, some of the site plan details, I'm going to run through some of these. As I mentioned, the lease agreement will give them the option to stay there for the next 100 years, reconfigured to include 10.5 acres. There will be a new Dreher Trail Road alignment, so it will be shifted slightly, and there will be 76 parking spaces will be added north of the lease area. That's the subject of the parking waiver, so we do provide the required amount of parking. 27% of it is located outside of the lease area. It's just directly north of that. The site does feature 208 parking spaces within the lease area. So there'll be additional sidewalk and pathways installed within the park to work within the existing park layout. There will be lake drainage, water, and sewer utility improvements. The lake that you see there will be expanded and used to handle some of the drainage on site. We did an extensive tree survey. We're able to preserve 69 trees and relocate 131 of them. The rest will be accounted for with new plantings and mitigation. And there's a couple of large ficus trees that were being relocated and preserved to become some of the focal points. This will be a phased project. It will have 2 phases. I'll go through some of the details of those, but it is important to note that the Science Center will remain open throughout the duration of this project. And the building will be utilizing sustainable building LEED methods. So inside the building, I won't run through all these, but there's going to be, it's currently 30,000 square feet. As I mentioned, we're adding about 70,000 square feet. This will allow for a new lobby area, aquarium, planetarium, gift shops, and educational and office space as well. So a lot of those are included in the staff report and application. So as I mentioned, this will be a phased project. This area in green right here is going to be the limits of phase 1. So that is going to entail the demolition and reconfiguration of some of the parking. That's going to lay the groundwork for some of the initial utility installation. There will be some of the Frisbee golf and things will be relocated during that phase as well. There will be a temporary parking and circulation plan during phase 1, but this will also address ADA upgrades, security upgrades, and the site lighting will be installed within the limits of the parking area. Phase 2 will include the final demolition of any of the remaining items on site, the utility, final utility installation, the construction of the new building expansion, the parking, circulation, and drop-off areas will be finalized, and then the landscaping and maintenance will all be handled in that phase as well. So just briefly, some of the sequencing of phase 1. So the parking lot gets, this is where the existing putt-putt golf is. They're going to remove 9 holes, add some parking there, address some parking up near the Stiles Nicholson Center as well, realign Dreher Trail. This is where the parking will also be added into that area as well. I mentioned the parking and lighting. The lake will be expanded to accommodate the drainage for the entire project. And then the southern parking lot south of the existing building will be expanded as well. So getting into the final site plan into phase 2, this arrow depicts where the 66,698 square foot new building will be with a lot of those new amenities. That is going to serve as the primary building for the Science Center. There'll also be a maintenance building constructed just south of that. There'll be a new bus parking area located just after the drop-off area, so that that'll promote educational opportunities there. There'll be a new site entrance featuring enhanced landscaping, decorative walkway, and a fountain at the entrance. There'll be a new butterfly garden installed northeast of the STEM Center. And then there'll be a connector road for amphitheater access for their loading and unloading for all the events that take place there. So that's kind of an overview of some of the main site highlights, and then there'll be the chiller enclosure added in that area as well. And this building is, this image is looking southwest at the building. You can see I-95 in the background there. So this is a rendering of what the project will look like once it's completed. And as I mentioned in the previous slides, we are requesting 4 different waivers to facilitate the development of this project. I have them listed here, although I'm going to go through them and just kind of point out where they're affected on the site. So the first waiver that we are requesting tonight, as I mentioned, is to locate 27% of our parking, which is 76 spaces, off-site. In this case, off-site is just outside the lease area. So this red box kind of depicts this area right here. You can see at the bottom of that drawing that thick black line, that's the north boundary of the lease area. So all of this parking is located within the park, but will be maintained by the Science Center. So that's the first waiver, is for off-site parking. Waiver number 2 is for a reduction of the minimum building spacing. The code requires 15 feet of building separation. We are proposing a 9-foot separation, so we're requesting a waiver of 6 feet. So if you look at the new building and the existing building and the 2 new ones, there's reduced separation there and there as well. So to the east and north of the existing building is where it gets down to about 9 feet there, and that just allows the site to be a little more cohesive, and it will flow a little bit better. Waiver number 3 is requesting a waiver from the landscape buffers, which is required. Code requires buffering of non-residential uses adjacent to a public thoroughfare and non-residential zoning districts. So that affects all sides of this property. The north, east, and south abuts a non-residential zoning district, which is the recreation open space for the existing park. And to the west is the public thoroughfare for I-95. The north, east, and south sides of this project, as we said, abut the park, and we wanted the idea was to create a campus-like feel that was cohesive with the park and not wall it off and screen it from those other uses. And there is an existing sound wall and landscape buffer located along the I-95 border right there. So we are requesting waivers from all those buffers. And the fourth and final waiver that we are requesting is fences and walls shall not exceed 48 inches in height in the required front setback. For this project, the front setback was actually determined to be I-95. So we're requesting, there's one existing gate that will be replaced and improved as part of this project. So if we look at this southern part of the site plan, in this area right here, there's an existing gate that we'd like to be able to maintain and get a waiver for. Staff has included 7 conditions in their staff report. We have begun working on some of these. Number 1 there, as you see, relates to maintenance. We've agreed to that. We've submitted our tree alteration permit based on the submitted plan. We've had a discussion with Parks and Recreation regarding the relocation of 3 trees that they've chosen to an off-site location within the park. So we've agreed to relocate, plant, and stake those for them, at which point they'll take over the maintenance of those trees. So we wanted to do that for their future amenities in that area. And then numbers 4 through 7 are pretty standard conditions, and the applicant agrees to all of those. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, any questions? Jean, let me start with you.
No questions.
Carla? Peter?
Can you talk a little bit more about how you intend to handle the increase in school buses or perhaps tourist buses coming to the facility?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, I think this slide here, as you can see, so the new bus parking area, as you'll see where that arrow is depicting, the site doesn't currently have any bus parking, so we've included 4 additional spaces. And you can see my cursor. Also in this area right here in front of the Stiles Nicholson Center, they have included a drop-off area there as well that can accommodate, as well as in this area right here. So the idea the buses come in, drop off, and then can go over there and park. And as far as the increase in additional visitors and traffic, the way the site plan is set up is for daily usage of the Science Center, which the building is about 70,000 square feet, as I mentioned. roughly half of that square footage is back of house for equipment and staff and cannot be accessed by guests. So the occupancy for this building is actually lower than the square footage number would suggest. However, the site is designed to meet all of the parking requirements. So the day-to-day operations can be accommodated on site, and that parking that's located, those 76 spaces to the north outside the lease area, are intended for when they have events to handle some of that spillover parking. But all of that was studied to ensure that there was no parking shortage for this project.
One final question is, can you talk a little bit about approximate dates of completion?
Approximate dates of completion. I believe that they are wanting to break ground on this project in the fall. Phase 1 is going to be approximately 12 to 18 months, I believe. And then phase 2 is, I believe, is 24 months. So about 2.5 to 3 years from this fall.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Deborah, any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Anyone else? Okay, all right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
May we hear from staff?
Linda Louise, Senior Planner for the record again. So just to quickly provide some background history, the Science Center has a long-standing lease agreement with the city to locate and operate within Dreher Park, and they've been located in the park for a number of years now. Currently, the Science Center lease area is comprised of 2 separate non-contiguous areas totaling 6.55 acres. The city and the Science Center is currently in the process of amending the lease agreement that would add an additional 3.95 acres, and that would consolidate the separate parcels into one. And when it is finalized, the total Science Center lease area will be comprised of 10.5 acres. And just as an FYI, Dreher Park is currently 115 acres. So once the lease agreement is finalized, the applications heard tonight, as well as the lease agreement, will move forward to City Commission concurrently for adoption. So the applicant is seeking approval of 2 requests, which I will cover in my presentation. The first request is for code revision case number 2210. It's a privately initiated text amendment to add cultural facilities as a use eligible to apply for parking waivers. And the second request is for planning board case number 1947, which only affects the lease area parcel. And it's for the rezoning of the Science Center lease area to a community service plan development. And this application requires an initial rezoning from recreation and open space to community service, and then a further rezoning from community service to community service plan development, which would enable the applicant to create the Cox Science Center CSPD, and that will provide for the 73,000 square foot expansion and associated site improvements. And as noted by the applicant is seeking 4 waivers for the project in order to provide for the expansion within the constraints of their lease area. So the proposed text amendment to the zoning code only affects section 94-203, Community Service Plan Development District, which provides the general regulations for a CSPD. The portion that will be modified is subsection C, which lays out the requirements for a parking waiver within a CSPD. So currently, only schools are permitted to apply for a parking waiver within a CSPD. So the applicant is just seeking the approval to modify this particular subsection text to expand the list of eligible uses to include cultural facilities. So in this slide, you can see the yellow underlined text is the proposed new text, which only adds cultural facilities as a eligible use. In analyzing the text amendment, staff does not have any issues. The text amendment will allow the Science Center to apply for a parking waiver in the request for rezoning to a community service plan development, which is necessary for the Science Center expansion project to address its parking requirements within the constraints of the lease area. And the proposed text amendment will not change the criteria or process for parking waivers within a CSPD. So the standards and procedures for a parking waiver will not change from what's currently written in code. It's just adding to the list of eligible uses to apply for a parking waiver. As for the rezoning of the lease area parcel, the rezoning requires 2 steps. The first is the rezoning of the parcel from recreation and open space to community service, and the second step is a further rezoning of the parcel from community service to community service plan development. And the community service plan development will allow the applicant to apply for waivers from the requirements of the zoning code, which is necessary to provide for their expansion. So this slide shows the site plan of the proposed expansion project laid over a current aerial image of Dreher Park, and it illustrates how the expansion project will impact the immediate surrounding area. As for staff's analysis on the rezoning and the expansion project, the rezoning to community service is consistent with the existing science center use. The further rezoning to a community service plan development is necessary for the science center to accommodate its expansion within the constraints of the lease area. And as detailed in the staff report, the applicant is seeking 4 waivers from the zoning code to provide for the expansion project, including the waiver from the parking requirement for cultural facilities, which is also contingent upon the approval of the code revision case that's being heard tonight. So staff doesn't object to the waivers and agrees with the applicant that given the constraints of the lease area and desire to provide for a cohesive project with its surroundings, the waivers are necessary. As for project review, the Plans and Plats Review Committee did review the project back in December of last year, and they have found the project technically sufficient to move forward to the public hearing stage. The Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee also reviewed the expansion project last year, and they did not have any objections, and the project was also issued a traffic concurrency approval letter from the county. Based on staff's findings and analysis, staff is recommending approval of code revision case number 2210, as staff has found that the text amendment does comply with the amendment standards of our zoning code. Staff is also recommending approval of planning board case number 1947 for the rezoning with conditions, as staff has found that the rezoning complies with the rezoning standards of our zoning code. There are conditions of approval, and there's 7 of them, which have been detailed in the staff report, and as noted by the applicant is agreeing to all 7 conditions for this project. And that concludes staff's presentation. If there are any questions,
Thank you. Any
I'm more
questions
than
of
happy
staff?
to
Let's start with you,
answer.
Deborah, Peter, Carla, Jean?
No question.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure.
Would anyone from the public wish to be heard on this application? And if not, we'll bring it back to the board. Any concerns on anyone from approving this? Jean, any
And
concerns?
wait for it to be finished.
Looks like a wonderful project.
So let's make a motion. It's,
We start with the code revision one, they said.
Yep,
We
uh-huh.
need to do that one first.
I move that the planning board recommend to the city commission approval of code revision case number 22-10, a request by John Schmidt of Schmidt-Nichols on behalf of Cox Science Center and Aquarium for a text amendment to section 94-203C, Community Service Plan Development, CSPD, District Parking Waiver of Article 7, Special Districts of the City of West Palm Beach Zoning and Land Development Regulations to add cultural facilities as a use eligible to apply for a parking waiver within a Community Service Plan Development, CSPD, zoning district. The motion is based upon the testimony presented at the hearing, along with the application submitted and the staff report, which constitute competent, substantial evidence. The planning board hereby makes findings of fact that the application complies with the required standards in section 94-32 of the City of West Palm Beach zoning and land development regulations.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
I move that the planning board recommend to the city commission approval of planning board case number 1947, a request by John Schmidt of Schmidt-Nichols on behalf of Cox Science Center and Aquarium to rezone the Science Center lease area comprised of plus or minus 10.5 acres within Dreher Park from recreation and open space to community service, CS. The motion is based upon the testimony presented at the hearing, along with the application submitted and the staff report, which constitute competent, substantial evidence. The planning board hereby makes findings of fact that the application complies with the required standards in section 94-32 of the City of West Palm Beach zoning and land development regulations.
We have a motion. Have we a second?
Second.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. That brings us then to Planning Board case numbers 1956 and 1956A. It's a two-part city-initiated request. Ms. Van. They're going through our birth years, and that's how they name applications. Okay?
Good evening, Angela Van, Planning and Zoning Administrator. I'm representing Planning Board Case 1956 and 1956A, which is city-initiated request for future land use map amendment and a rezoning for the property located at 1400 Henrietta Avenue, as shown here in the red. Just to give you a quick background, this property is originally built in late 1990s with approximately 72 units on it. It was known as the Lincoln Plaza Apartments. It was actually a mixed-use project with apartments, and then they also had some commercial on it. And subsequently to sometime in early 2000, it was demolished, and basically Palm Beach County actually ended up owning the property. And in 2006, the Palm Beach County Commissioner conveyed the property to the city for development of affordable housing. And then part of that development conveyance, it was a deed restriction that required the city to build affordable housing on it. In 2011, the county agreed to allow the property to be used for other neighborhood needs, community center, community garden, et cetera. And to facilitate this, the city and the commission approved the following in 2012. We actually took the property from a future land use amendment from multifamily to community service, and we also rezoned it from multifamily low density to Coleman Park Community Service. And then from 2013 to approximately 2021, the parcel was leased to operate an urban market garden, and that lease ended in 2021. And the City Commission at their December 9th, 2022 Mayor Commission work session authorized the support of a partnership with West Palm Beach Housing Authority to redevelop the site again and to put affordable housing back on the property. And therefore, basically, the city is back again to take the existing future land use map amendment from community service and basically put it back to the proposed future land use amendment of multifamily. Actually, the approval of the multifamily future land use designation would decrease the development potential and return this to its original future land use designation of multifamily. And then existing zoning would take it from Coleman Park Community Service to proposed zoning was Coleman Park Multifamily Low Density Residential. And again, they would also take it back to original purpose of residential zoning. Staff analyzed rezoning standards based on amendment standards in section 9432 and found that all 8 standards are consistent. Staff recommends approval of Planning Board Case 1956 based on the finding that the amendment complies with provisions of Chapter 163 for the statute and the city's comp plan. Also approval of Planning Board Case number 1956A based on the finding that the petition meets the required rezoning standards in section 9432 of the City of West Palm Beach zoning and land development regulations. Includes staff presentation. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? Gene, let's start with you.
Sure. Does the city have a developer in mind for the affordable housing?
It's going to go back partnership with West Palm Beach Housing Authority.
Okay.
Thank you. Carla? Peter?
Angela, can you talk about density, what you expect to be built here on this property?
Well, originally, again, haven't seen the site plan, so we're talking 14 units per acre, basically, and the site is so awkward. the site, in talking with our housing, it's going to be well below what be allowed by right, because it just can't fit. I think it's 22 units, 21, 22 units by right, but based on the design today and parking and all, they probably will not get there, maybe half of that. They haven't come up with a site plan. Again, the Housing Authority is going to work with the city to come up with a site plan for the property. But again, the code will allow them to do up to 21, I believe, and from my conversations, probably less than that, given the awkward size of this property.
G, I mean, it's even,
Yeah, I don't have any
Deborah,
questions.
I'm still thinking, any questions?
No.
Okay, all right, thank you so much. Would anyone from the public wish to be heard? If not, let's bring it back to the board. Any concerns?
No.
If not, I'm looking for a motion.
I'll move approval that the planning board recommend to the city commission approval of a two-part city-initiated request for the following. One, planning board case number 1956 is a small-scale future land use map amendment to change the FLU designation of property consisting of approximately 1.519 acres located at 1400 Henrietta Avenue from community service to multifamily. And part two is planning board case number 1956A, a rezoning to change the zoning designation of property consisting of approximately 1.519 acres located at 1400 Henrietta Avenue from Coleman Park Community Service to Coleman Park Multifamily Low Density Residential CPM F14. The motion is based upon the testimony presented at the hearing along with the application submitted and the staff report, which consists of competent substantial evidence. The planning board hereby makes finding the fact that the application complies with the required standards of policy 1.1.5 of the City of West Palm Beach Comprehensive Plan and sections 94-32A of the City of West Palm Beach Zoning and Land Development Regulations.
We have a
Second.
Motion, and we have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Just check, we cover both cases, Sam, or?
1956, 50.
And did that motion cover both cases? Do we need a second one or not? With 56 and 56A. Okay, that's fine, great. I know how particular you get, Sam. We try to do right by you. Okay, thank you. That brings us then to planning board case number 1949.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if I may, I noticed that a lot of comment cards were delivered subsequent to the swearing in.
Okay.
So if we could indulge the group in that.
Absolutely. Do you think for this particular one, or do you think we should wait until the next one? You think this one will have speakers? Okay. Two quick matters. For those who wish to offer testimony this evening, we need you to fill out a card and give it to the clerk. For anyone who wasn't here during the swearing in, I would ask you to stand up if you wish to offer testimony this evening and raise your right hand. This is for anyone who's come in since the original swearing in. Anyone else who missed the initial swearing in, who planned to testify? All right. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be truthful? You may be seated. Thank you. All right, 1949.
Let's see if I can start it.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jack Rice. I'm an attorney at the law firm of Gunster Yoakley. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, 1525 North Flagler Drive. We are here to discuss a dock extension, and this is case number 1949. Just to give a brief presentation outline, as I said, my name is Jack Rice. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, 1525 North Flagler Drive, LLC. I'm joined here by Bree Kokos of Ocean Consulting, as well as Matt Wachowski of Schmidt & Nichols. We're going to provide basically a very brief overview of the project this evening. Then I'm going to hand the presentation over to Matt, who will talk about just the design of the facility. Bree, as a marine biologist, will speak to avoiding impacts to the marine environment, as well as reaching adequate depths. And then we'll go into the nature of the private facility, as well as illustrate comparable docks that are nearby, and then take any questions. As a bit of overview, the project site is a total of 0.55 acres, and that is both a riparian as well as an upland parcel. On the upland parcel, there is currently an office building that was built in 1958. Just adjacent to that is the submerged parcel. As a matter of right, the property is permitted to have a private dock of up to 100 feet with 2 slips. And what we're proposing is a private dock of greater than 100 feet in length with 2 slips, one for a 150-foot and one for a 60-foot vessel. That does include a security fence, and you'll hear some discussion this evening how we have agreed to the installation or to improve an existing crosswalk at the property to provide access over to Flagler. And what we're seeking is authorization for the extension beyond 100 feet. The code essentially allows for extensions to exceed that 100 feet length when it is to avoid damage to the marine environment, as well as it's to reach safe depths. So with that, I will hand it over to Matt.
Great, thank you. So as Jack mentioned, the dock will be extending beyond that 100 feet that is permitted by right. We are requesting an extension beyond that of 182 feet for a total of 282 feet. So this arrow right here depicts the extension that we are requesting. As mentioned, this is to avoid damage to the marine environment, as well as to permit the use and enjoyment of the dock. So just for clarity, that is the smaller slip that will accommodate the 60-foot boat, and that is the larger slip at the end there that will accommodate the larger boat. So I'm going to turn it over to Bree to talk about some of the adequate depths and why we need this extension.
Hello, my name is Bree Kokis. I'm with Ocean Consulting. I'm a marine biologist with over 20 years of working with benthic survey work and mapping and environmental permitting in South Florida, the Caribbean, and Central America. I'm very, very familiar with the marine habitat in this area. I was, in fact, the one that dove the area to do the survey work initially, and I also created the benthic survey maps. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. Just the arrow button, is that what it is? Okay. So in the inside areas, this light blue area, the depths range from -1 to -6 feet, mean low water. It's the first 250 feet offshore, very, very shallow. Between 250 and 280 feet offshore, the depths drop off between -6 and -10 feet. That is the target area for larger vessels because we need at least 1 foot of clearance per the state code. You need 1 foot of clearance from the maximum, from the deepest draft of your vessel. So if you have a vessel that has a 6-foot draft, you need 7 feet of depth. 8-foot draft, 9 feet of depth. 2-foot draft, 3 foot of depth, at least. So here is a map of in the region. There's the project site. So if you were to look at this aerial is a little bit dark, but if you match this up with a Google aerial, you would find that light and dark blue area coincides with a channel, federal channel, that runs the entire length of this waterway. And this white line demonstrates that it coincides with it approximately. So the main channel is 1,000 feet offshore at this location, the federal channel. The irregular curved shoreline means the longer extension is needed to reach necessary depths. There's a natural curvature of that shoreline that you can see there. And several docks along the intracoastal exceed 100 feet because the deeper depths are so far offshore. And before I get into that, I just want to go into one more thing here. So just to speak a little bit about depths, the shallower water is where the resources are. The deeper water, it's too deep for sunlight to penetrate to the bay bottom, and therefore there is no seagrass in those areas. So in these shallower areas, inside from where the dock is going across, that's where the seagrass is found. So we're going to get into that a little bit more. But I just wanted to touch on that. So these are areas, docking facilities in the area with comparable extensions offshore. There is the 2 private docks with the yellow pins here. The Yacht Club Towers condo that extends 416 feet offshore, and the 1 Watermark Place of the Palm Beaches condo is 350 feet. The red pins are the commercial marinas, and they extend over 700 feet to get to that depth that is required for these vessels. So there's definitely precedent in the area. Okay, so again, here we have marine navigation. So the extension of this facility will not create a navigational hazard. Lucky for every citizen of the United States that there is a permitting agency that handles and assesses navigation. That's the Army Corps of Engineers. The Army Corps of Engineers is tasked with assessing navigational conflicts for all docking facilities. And the Army Corps of Engineers has approved this design. They permitted the project as we see it presented here today. So that is a federal agency, and that's their job, the Navigation and Endangered Species Act. Both of those items were assessed by this agency, and they permitted the project. So that should rest any fears about navigational concerns, navigational conflicts. The feds, they looked at it, and they had no problem. So that is an important note here. The Florida Department of Environmental Protection determined the dock will not interfere with the marine environment. When I do these, when I work with different projects, part of my job here is to assess the marine environment and make recommendations how sensitive resources can be avoided or impacts can be minimized with various dock design options. And that is so that the Florida DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, will give their blessing for the permit. And in this case, what we did to minimize impacts was we incorporated graded decking on the access walkway. So there's going to be deckboard spacing along the entirety of the walkway. This allows sunlight to reach the bay bottom and will not interfere with seagrass productivity in the area. Now, I'm going to kind of go a little nerdy here, and forgive me if it's a little too technical, but I'm a marine biologist and I love what I do, so I want to just describe a little bit about the marine environment and the habitat. In this area, there is a species of seagrass called Halophila decipiens. Very small, it's only about an inch, the blades are only about an inch long, and the Halophila decipiens, because of its small size, really is outcompeted by the larger macroalgae species. In this area, there's a species of macroalgae called Halimeda. It's a genus, actually. It's called Halimeda. And Halimeda has fronds of 8 inches long. So the Halimeda often outcompetes the Halophila decipiens for substrate in unshaded areas. So if you have a shallow area, it's not shaded. Halophila decipiens, by the way, is called paddlegrass. So I'll refer to it as paddlegrass henceforth because the scientific name is a little complicated. So the Halimeda outcompetes the paddlegrass for substrate almost always because of the size differential. But paddlegrass is okay to grow in partially shaded areas. Partially shaded areas include docks that have deckboard spacing because there's this sunlight that still reaches the bay bottom. So often what you'll find in these areas is that if you have a dock with graded decking that is elevated at 5 feet above the mean high water line, there's adequate sunlight to reach the bay bottom still, and that eliminates the Halimeda from the area and promotes the growth of Halophila decipiens, the paddlegrass. So in this case, and I see it time and time again from West Palm all the way down to Dade County where I do most of my survey work, we find seagrass, paddlegrass, which is contrary to kind of, intuition here, but we see seagrass actually growing beneath these kinds of docks, and the Halimeda, the macroalgae, avoided and kept out of the area. Now, we really want to have more seagrass and less macroalgae, so it actually is a benefit, to be honest with you. Not to mention the marine growth that colonizes the dock pilings, sponges, soft corals, hard corals, a variety of fish species like to congregate around these areas. So these kinds of facilities actually provide a net benefit to the marine habitat and ecosystem as a whole. This is based on a lot of survey work experience that I've done. So I've seen it, I have lots of photo documentation of this exact scenario. So when there's a discussion from concerned citizens or whomever that this would fragment the environment, that is actually just not accurate based on scientific evidence that I've seen time and time again. Also important to note here that paddlegrass is already a patchy seasonal species, meaning today it's going to be in this location, next month it's going to be over there. In December, there's not going to be any paddlegrass there, and in July there's going to be a lot of paddlegrass. It's very, very transient in the way it grows. So the seagrass in this area is already quite fragmented just by the nature of how it grows. So I just providing that explanation here for you on the ways and how these species interact, just so you can understand what we're dealing with here and how this particular dock is in no way, shape, or form affecting that species coverage and growth in the area. Okay, I think I already went through this part, but this drawing shows the little green dots there show where the seagrass was located when I did my survey. And and you can see it's patchy. It kind of, it's all over the place, but it's definitely exclusively in the shallower areas. And the two species that I saw, like I said, is paddlegrass, and then the other one is Holodula wrighti, which is more on the inshore, and that one really requires shallow depth, so that's right near the marginal dock. And so you can see how the slip areas here are outside of where the seagrass is growing. So the vessels will not be impacting seagrass or seagrass habitat whatsoever. They are outside of where the seagrass is. And that's the whole reason for this design, is to get beyond those areas. So the vessels will not come in contact with the bay bottom. They will not churn the bay bottom up, nothing like that, because there's no seagrass there. And there's adequate depths for those vessels. Again, this shows the seagrass locations and that the slips are waterward of those areas.
I think what you have to do for a dog.
So this is a good photo. This is a photo directly from the bay bottom in these areas. This is paddlegrass. As you can see, very small, 1-inch blades or less. It's very, very, very common species. It is not a favorite of manatees or sea turtles. Of course, these species do munch on it on occasion, but they prefer manatee grass and turtle grass. But this species does have value. It does help consolidate bay bottom and create habitat for a variety of foraging species, but it's not the preferred. It's not the hamburger. It's like, the broccoli of the area. But anyway, so the lower photos show the denser seagrass in the shallower areas. You can see the coverage is much more dense. The top photo is really what you see in the offshore areas. Very patchy, very sparse, single root system, not dense coverage. So the design, of course, we mentioned before, reaches adequate depths, so that way we can avoid dredging. If we were to keep within the 100-foot range, we would have to dredge to provide slips, provide adequate depth for the vessels that are going to be mooring here. So dredging is 100 times more impactful to the marine environment than dock shading. And the reason is because it completely eliminates the habitat, completely. Not to mention creating an incredible amount of turbidity, and the state would just simply not allow it. The DEP would not allow that here. So, and then of course, this dock design avoids slip shading of sensitive shallower areas by moving them offshore. And that also helps to eliminate the risk of vessel grounding and bottom strikes. I think I'm going to hand it over for the more of the technical areas, but if you have any questions, of course, I'm here.
I have a question.
Thank you, Bree. I'm not sure my portion's more technical though. The seagrass lesson, but this is going to be a private facility. The applicants are seeking to provide both a clean, quiet, and safe private facility, consistent with the requirements of the city code as well as other private docking facilities in the area. It's limited to a private use. It will be only for the owners and tenants of the building. It will be both secured and gated. It's not a marina. It's not proposed to be a marina, and it will not be a marina. So there's going to be no fueling stations. There's no pump out stations. There's no transient or short stay vessels. There's no commercial party boats. Through the city's own code and through the restrictions that have to be enforced by the owner, it will be a private dock. At the request of the city, one of the things we are doing is, if you look, there is already kind of an existing walkway from one side of Flagler to the other, is we will be improving this and striping it, and that will be available to all residents of the area. I won't belabor the point. We have the staff recommendation of approval, and you have our justification statement really illustrating how we meet each of the Class A standards for the use. The applicants, once again, are committed to a safe, silent, state-of-the-art private docking facility, and what we are seeking is the waiver to reach the adequate depths in order to avoid impacting both the marine features as well as the environment overall. We do have the Army Corps and FDEP design and conceptual approval, and we have a staff recommendation of approval and are available if you have any questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions of the applicant? Let me start with you, Deborah.
I don't have it.
Peter?
I have a question for Emily.
Okay.
When you were scuba diving the area, did you find any pirate ships or treasure?
No, I have found in my surveys a lot of really interesting things. I've found cars and motorcycles and all kinds of, various party supplies. But in this particular site, there is a lot of trash and debris in the nearshore areas, mostly from just stormwater runoff, but there's nothing exciting, no. There's no lobsters or anything like that.
Thank you. Any questions you have? Gene, any questions?
Sure. I have a question as well. Can you speak a little bit more about the scope of the assessment conducted by the Army Corps of Engineers, and if that includes an analysis of the seagrass that you mentioned?
Sure. So during the environmental permitting process with the Army Corps, they request a benthic survey report, which we provided. So I did this. The survey requires, the methodology that we use is line transect survey work. So we run lines offshore. In this case, I think I went 500 feet offshore, or possibly more. I think I went actually all the way to 1,000 feet to the channel, at 10-foot intervals, and then we map the coverage in those areas, and we overlay that in AutoCAD, a computer modeling program, onto a rectified aerial of the site. So the locations where those data points fall are exactly where they are in real time in the marine environment. And then we submit that data and a report to the Army Corps, to the DEP. If we were in Dade County, we would submit it to DERM. I don't know if you're familiar with DERM. Broward County Environmental as well. That's usually the usual procedure. Then they have us fill out they have a form of, how they can evaluate, and then they sometimes make site visits. They don't tell us they're going to do that, but I assume that they would have in this case. And then they make determination. Then they take that data and then they go to, they have sister agencies like the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission and Archaeological Resource Division. They go to these different sister agencies where they make their recommendations of approval or denial. It's a recommendation really of may affect or may adversely affect or will not affect listed species, and navigation. And so in this case, with our report, their site visit, and then their input from these various sister agencies, they make those determinations of may affect or may not affect. And of course, in this case, they determined that it will not affect those listed species or navigation, and they permitted the project, I think, in 2019. 2019 they permitted it.
Okay. And then all the observable species are identified?
Yes. Well, in this case, there's two species of seagrass on site, the Halophila decipiens, paddlegrass, and the Halidul wrighti, which is called shoalgrass. The shoalgrass is almost exclusively just along that riprap border on the shoreline, and then the paddlegrass is patchy throughout the shallower areas. There is the macroalgae that we usually don't show on the maps because we just don't do it. But in this case, the genus is called Halimeda, and it's a larger species. And the Corps permit was issued April 29, 2020. There's macroalgae. And then, there's a couple, we don't really write in, the crabs and the worms and the different things like that. We're really talking about the flora of the area. Those are the impacts.
Thank you.
Okay. And this is not considered essential fish habitat, which is part of their review process as well, this area.
All right, thank you. May we hear from staff?
Alexis Sangalier for the record, and I'd like to first thank Jack, Bree, and Matt for doing a great job presenting. Makes my job a little easier. So as you heard from them, this is a dock extension from North Flagler. So just the slight background, the zoning is professional office residential. The subject property is 0.6 acres. It's currently used as an attorney office, and like they have stated, this is for private use only. It's not going to be a marina. In the surroundings is office and a residential building apartments. We are recommending approval with conditions. The applicant has agreed to these conditions, and these conditions are followed as no advertising of signage, and basic regular approvals, a permit from the engineering department, and record from the county prior to building permits. I'm not going to go in too much in depth regarding the waiver. I did print out it is in the staff report, which the board has, but if you want to double check the Army Corps of Engineers, the approval letter, I did print off 2 copies if you want to double check that. And then these are the findings, and they do meet all the standards. The only ones would be the length. Due to what within the Army Corps, I did mark the environment just because I do agree with staff's professional opinion that when it's extended, the environment will be safer in this scenario. And also, I also marked the government one just because within the Army Corps of Engineering, they do support the lengths due to the length and environmental. And then this is just the existing dock length that do exceed the 100 length that you saw previously. And then, before we go to questions, I did get a couple public comments regarding this. I did print off copies. Most of the public comments were general, just what's happening, no one really against it. There was one person, I believe is in the audience, Mark, who he sent 2 emails. I'll bring them around so you guys check.
Okay. Ask her if we have any cards on this one. Could you pass them down for me?
As you can see when you're looking over this, he did list multiple names on this. They aren't signatures, and some of them are Jane Doe's, so they're not clear. I didn't hear any comments from those particular people other than that he listed them on the list.
Thank you.
Is there any questions for staff?
Okay, any questions of staff? Let me start with you, Deborah. Any questions
I don't have any
of
questions.
her? Peter, any questions of staff?
No, the dock is about 20 feet too short for my yacht.
All right. Carla, any questions? Jean, any questions?
No questions.
You know, I just have a general question. I mean, not even so much for tonight, but kind of long-term. Here's what concerns me. We start with the premise here that we're going to have boats of a certain scale, a certain size, which may or may not be appropriate for property of this size. So if you start with the premise you have to have that big a boat, then by definition, you have to move it much further out. I'm not necessarily opposed or in favor of that, but here's what happens. We make this large extension, if we decide we support that, then the next person comes by and says, well, you gave it this way. It just seems there should be a more comprehensive look. If our 100 feet is not appropriate anymore for the reasons we've heard, then we should be more uniform then in how we do it. Because once we make an exception, then it comes right back to us the next time someone comes in and says, well, you did it for that person. How can you justify the inconsistent treatment? And so, to me, the question almost comes down to what size boats would be appropriate for that property. The bigger the boat, the further out you're gonna have to go in order to avoid the damage. Does that make sense, my question?
Yes, I believe there's talk going on with staff. Angela can clarify more information about this, but we have been seeing a lot more Class A boat locks come in due to the extension and safe water depths.
Right. I just want us to be just a more thoughtful, comprehensive than sometimes I feel, not you, but for us, we see it haphazard. One here, one there, and it doesn't seem to make sense. So Angela, do you understand my question?
Angela Van, Planning and Zoning Administrator. I do, and staff looks at each project on its own merits, but you have to remember that most applicants in this area have the right to build a dock, have riparian rights and the right to build a dock, and a lot of what we can enforce has been preempted by the state. They have given the authority to Army Corps and Durham to actually look at it and say, okay, this is okay. Because we don't, and we've always.
Is there any limitation to the size boat? Because if you do let me take an extreme example, an extremely large boat, if you're saying they have the right to build a dock, the kind of dock that could accommodate that larger boat without damaging the seagrass, without damaging other things, maybe twice the distance out,
Correct.
or 3 times the distance, far, until we get, I guess, to the channel, I guess. At that point, it interferes with traffic.
Can't go in the chair. I think, man, you're asking, that's staff to say, look at something and say, okay, you only can have this size boat, or you can have that size yacht.
but
Staff really doesn't, in the context of how we review Class A's, because of what's been preempted to us by the state.
Yeah.
The state has taken a lot of it away from us, and it basically is saying.
I get it. I'm
I
just
understand what you're
saying.
saying, but I'm trying to
just saying,
say.
maybe we shouldn't have the 100-feet limitation. Maybe it should be at 200 feet. Whatever it should be, we should look at. That's all. That's just my thought, long term. Okay, thank you. All right, we have a number of cards. Here's how I'd like to do it. We're gonna have 2 at each podium. You have 3 minutes. You have the timer going. Okay, so on this podium, if we could hear from Beverly Bernstein. Now, you have comments. Are you here, Ms. Bernstein? I'm sorry, are you Beverly Bernstein? Did you want to? I'm sorry, I could not hear you. I didn't know if you wrote some written comments. Do you want me to read those in the record, or you wish to come forward? I guess you're coming forward. And then Fran Perchnik, if you could come behind her. At this other podium, if we could hear from Marisol and Christine Cribbs. I saw you wrote some comments. I didn't know if you wanted me to read them records, or you want to come forward.
I'll speak.
Okay, please state your name for the record.
Sure, it's Beverly
Thank you.
Bernstein, and I live at Flagler Point. I'm opposed to this permit for this dock. It's going to change the landscape of the area. There's already a lot of changes that are taking place. I'm not against development, but to have a dock that size, which is going to be so large, and you're going to have to dredge the water, it's not a natural harbor. It's a lagoon. It's not Monte Carlo. It's going to look like a parking lot for boats. We already have a marina that's going to be at North Seamud. You're changing the marina downtown, and now you're going to want to put a special dock in for just supposedly 2 large boats. I'm totally against it for the shading and the seagrass and the marine life that travels down there, and it just seems. I know you said it was going to be safe. It seems like it's not safe, and it just seems to be above and beyond. And to your point, sir, when you said if you make an exception for one, you're going to have to make an exception for all, and you're setting a precedent. So. That's it, basically.
Right, thank you for your comments. And behind her is Fran. But on this podium, we have, let's see here, is Marisol or Sali? Okay, let me read yours in the record then. You oppose this, an eyesore on our waterfront. It's literally a football field of a dock, excessively large, 5 times beyond the 100-feet property, right? Property never suitable for deep water dock, shades the area, disrupts fragile waterfront ecosystem, hazard to navigate, and unsafe boating. Christian Cribbs, are here? You're going to be on that one. If you could come forward, I'm going to go back and forth. And after Fran, if we could have Alfonso Gastilla behind her. Please, behind this lady here. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you.
State your name for the record, and then.
Christian Cribbs for the record. I live at 1551 North Flagler Drive, which is going to be right in front, or right behind, I should say, of this dock. I am against this dock. Where we live is kind of a special place on Flagler because the road curves in. So like they said in their presentation, there's a need, I guess, to go out because of that curve in. But we have one of the widest places on the intercoastal of view water, and this would totally obstruct it and ruin it. The examples that were shown on the board ended at the yacht club and started, I believe, at the downtown docks. I call them the Clematis Street docks. Cleverly, they didn't go above where they want to build this dock. To the north, there is nothing like this. There's no dock. So this would be the first of probably many that you'd have to deal with, which would totally ruin the views of the water, which right now are totally unobstructed and beautiful. 1525 Flagler, who wants this dock, is for sale for $26 million, I forget. With that building, they have a ability to build 5 stories high. This dock, in my opinion, is only being asked of you to approve to increase the property value to that $26 million, because someone's going to be able to put their super yacht at the end of it, which is, I was just on a boat last week in New York, 110 feet. It was $8,000 a week for a 110-foot yacht in New York. Down here, you have to assume it's probably 30 a week for a yacht that's going to be 150, 175, 200 feet. And that yacht, if you approve it, will be outside of my condo. I live at the end of the Slade, so if you're looking east, my condo is right here. There's other condos that are on the north side and the south side. I will have the best view of this super yacht out of anyone in this room except for Tim. So if we start doing this, we're going to have super yachts lining down Flagler, where if you look at it right now, from the yacht club down, you have absolutely nothing. From the yacht club north, of course, you have the Brazilian docks, the downtown docks. The yacht club fits about 40 boats. The Watermark is a private condo. Their dock was built for the use of their residents. This dock is not for the use of any other people besides 1525 Flagler, who are currently attorneys. I don't think they own super yachts. I don't know if they own boats, but I don't think they own super yachts. I think precedent's going to be your most important thing to look at here. If you start here, you're not going to end here, and you're going to ruin North Flagler Drive.
Thank you. All right. There you go, okay.
No, it's not.
It's not working. Then why don't you just keep track as best you can and maybe hold it with fingers or something? I know it's a pain. Thank you. Okay, thank you. And on this one, I'm sorry, Alfonso Castillo, was that the gentleman who just spoke? Yeah. Okay, thank you. No, if you could be at that podium, go ahead, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Fran Perchik. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Forgive me because I have changed my comments a little bit in response to some of the presentation that I heard here today. So I'll read you my comments first, and then I might have a couple of additional points to include. So I'm concerned about the dock as well. I think that it is incompatible development for our community. The North Flagler Drive community is a tranquil community, and there are a lot of different projects that are proposed, both in terms of height of some upcoming high-rises that are proposed, but also some impacts to the Lake Worth Lagoon and our waterfront. Just wanted to note that there are some folks that live in the area north of Good Samaritan and south of the Sea Mud District who have some concerns. Some of them were included in that letter that you mentioned with the signatures. We believe, and I speak on my own behalf, but there are some other folks on that list as well, we believe that the project will impact the nearshore ecosystem. I know that that was addressed by one of the folks in the room. We also believe that there will be a threat to habitat and that it will also impact the traffic in the waterway and traffic along North Flagler Drive as well. Wanted to just address a couple of other things. There was mention that the species such as the invertebrates and crabs really aren't worth mentioning and aren't included in the report. Those are critical species. They are feeding the rest of the ecosystem. There are other species that rely on those species, so if they're disturbed, that would create a problem. Just so that you're aware, a lot of the folks in this room walk along Flagler Drive every day and have observed a number of species. There's also a list of species that live in Lake Worth Lagoon, but just the ones that I've seen, dolphin, sharks, consistently I've seen manatees, I've seen federally endangered, federally listed sea turtles. I've seen other imperiled wildlife, including rays. We've seen a mass migration of rays, many rays at once, right along that area. Just wanted to mention a couple of other things. Let me just take a quick look at my notes. Yes, the Lake Worth Lagoon Management Plan. I don't know if everyone in the room is familiar with the Lake Worth Lagoon Management Plan. It is a Palm Beach County management plan that was issued in 2021. And I can't quote from it offhand, but I'll tell you that it actually has a goal of protecting and restoring the Lake Worth Lagoon. Part of that plan is the creation of an island, and I don't want to speak on behalf of Palm Beach County, but you might be aware that they're doing some coastal resilience projects throughout the Lake Worth Lagoon. You might see some mangroves that have been planted and some islands that have been created across the lagoon. There's also a plan for an island right there at Providencia Park, right next to Good Samaritan Hospital, just a half a block away from this proposed dock. So I don't know if you're familiar with that project or the plan that I'm referring to, but I would love for you to take a
Forgive me,
look.
our time is broken, but you've had 3 minutes, if you just want to conclude your comments.
I
Thank
think
you.
that's my conclusion.
so
I would
much.
love for you to take a look at the evidence and some of the other content before you move forward in a decision.
Thank you so much. All right, on that, is there a Mr. McGrave? So, Mr. R.M. McGrav, are you still here? All right, is Mark Barbian? If you go, sir, to that one, and go ahead now, sir.
Okay. Good afternoon, and thank you for hearing us.
If you could please state your name for the record. Please state your name for the record.
Yeah, my name is Alfonso Castillo. I live in the 1551 North Flagler Drive. I'm the president of the board of directors of around 200 units that represents 400 families, and no one of them truly are in agreement with this exception. I definitely believe that every one of them have legitimate concerns. I know that there are some studies.
That's not you. Keep going, sir. Sorry.
Okay, and surveys, but what happened below that surface? I think I really have some legitimate concerns. As you mentioned some of those ones. I mean, what is the size of the boats? Why going all the way 3 times what is approved by the county? There are going to be so many buildings later on using the same exception. Probably we can use the same exception. We are 1525. We probably have 3 times the front flagler that this request is given to you. So honestly speaking, from the environmental point of view, from the residents that are living around, from the city, I don't think that there is any support. There is no public good bringing these kind of exceptions and not thinking on the environment and not thinking on the people that are living around there. And I just want to say, like everyone else is saying here, this is not going to be positive for our community. It's not going to be positive for the environment. It's not going to be positive for our lives. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is Julie Spence still here? Ma'am, if you come forward to that podium. Thank you.
Well, I'm a little behind on my tech in that I have handouts instead of a deck up on the screen there, but maybe I can figure out how to get that on the next time we meet. My name is Mark Barbian. I'm here to oppose the case number 1949, the 1525 dock. And one of the big reasons that I feel strongly about this is I'm a boater. The way I got introduced to West Palm Beach in 2014 is I came here not by car, not by plane, I came here by boat. And I loved how welcoming the community was for a boater. So it's kind of tough to go up against a dock like this. But as the chair mentioned, you know, what do you do with 200-foot boats, 150-foot boats? The staff mentioned that we're allowed to have, or the property's allowed to have 100 foot of dock, but we're talking, you know, 5 times that. You know, the request here is just outsized. It's 300 foot of dock, and then no one's really talked about the additional 200 feet of dolphins or mooring systems. So out into the Lake Worth Lagoon, you're gonna have something that's 3 billboards long by 2 billboards tall. You know, billboard's 48 feet by 14 feet, round numbers, so it's just a humongous, humongous ask. Now, again, for the right to build a 100-foot dock, I don't believe this land is ever suitable for a deepwater dock. As you look at property and real estate listings, you know, many will be listed deepwater slip, that kind of thing. Well, as the scientist said, you know, most of this land is dry at low water, and we're not talking about mean low water, just low water. So the reason why you have a 300-foot dock is you go out, 300 feet and you're in maybe 5, 6 feet of water. And I do have a contention with your surmise that the boat entering and leaving with only 1 foot under the keel of the boat is not going to disturb the environment. Take a couple thousand horsepower engine and a 150-foot boat, and you hit the throttles, you're going to, just wash away anything that was under the seabed there. So I maintain that the property never was suitable. So how is it that we can build a dock there? I think shading was covered well by Fran, so I won't get into that. But I do believe this is a hazard to navigation. The justifications that were used for the size of this dock were marinas, essentially. I mean, there was one by the condo unit on the corner of the bridge there, but the others were marinas, and those were all near a bridge. And what happens near a bridge is a bridge funnels traffic away from these long docks into where you cross underneath the bridge to continue down the waterway. And I think it's unsafe for boaters, and it's unexpected when there isn't a bridge there isn't a dock of this size within a half a mile of this area. Boater gets away from the downtown area, opens up the throttles. Lord knows, a boater late at night, comes throttling down the way there. I think we're looking for an accident.
If you could,
I will do.
I apologize, our
right now.
timer's not working, but you've had 3
Sure,
minutes. But
sure,
go ahead
I'll
if you
close
can
right now.
conclude your remarks.
I believe this is a total eyesore on the waterfront. I believe it's an overreach, an over-ask to get 500 feet of docking space, and I think it's dangerous.
Thank you, sir. All right, after him, if we could hear from, is Vernon Pierce still here? If you could come behind that lectern, and Frederick Jones? Frederick Jones, are you still here? Sir, if you could come behind her, and you go next, please. State your name for the record.
Hi, I'm Julie Spence. I'm a resident at 1551 North Flagler as well. My living room looks directly across.
I'm so sorry, ma'am. If you could speak more in the microphone, I'm having difficulty hearing you. Just try to speak more directly into the microphone.
Okay. My living room faces directly in the direction of where this dock is going to be. I have a direct view of the waterway, and I watch boats pass through that so-called channel that was mentioned earlier at great speed. So this proposed dock is going to extend beyond that channel where these shallow boats are passing at, say, 30, 40 knots. I am there on Saturdays and Sundays, and I witness probably about, I don't know, anywhere from 30 to 50 of them zigging by all day, every day. So that's a concern to me, because according to the United States Coast Guard, the main cause of boating accidents leading to death is collisions. Collisions both with another watercraft and collisions with stationary objects. So that's a huge concern to me personally. Not only am I a resident there, but I'm also a U.S. Coast Guard licensed captain, 200 tons. My husband is also a U.S. Coast Guard licensed captain, 1,600 tons. He's currently manning a 155-foot vessel. So if you look at a 155-foot vessel, you're talking about 10 crew, 2 owners, 10 guests. Where are they going to park? And you're not just talking about one 100-foot boat on one side of the dock and a 65-foot boat, but you're also talking about another one on the other side of that proposed dock. With a 85-foot proposed dock, you're talking about being able to easily accommodate up to 6 to possibly 8 yachts on that dock. You've also got to consider not only the safety around those boats, but what is going to happen with the pump out. If they're not providing pump outs, who's going to pump it out? Now they're pumping out black water tanks into our protected waterways. On top of that, you've got oil spillages, gas spillages. You've got contractors coming and going. You've got crew provisioning those boats for food and supplies. Where are they going to park, and how are they going to get those provisions to the boats? It's a huge logistical situation as well. This is not a marina. This is a private dock, but you have to consider what goes on a private yacht. My husband and I have been in the industry for myself over 30 years, him over 45 years. So speaking from experience, I see this as a huge logistical error.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
My name is Vernon Pierce. I'm here to oppose the project. I'm the Vice President of the Board of Directors of the Slade Condominium, located across the street from this. Julie brought up a number of concerns that I was going to talk about. One is provisioning and so forth. You don't have a large yacht like this without having crew and provisions and pump outs and so forth. And where those vehicles will probably have to park is right on Flagler Drive, because that's the only place that they can get close enough to that dock to stop, run pipes out, or whatever they need to do. Secondly, and I think we have to be practical about that, because you're going to be stopping traffic, and that's fairly high speed through that area. I've seen the profiles that our expert has shown us. There is a minimal amount of clearance. A yacht that size just doesn't nestle in there. They've got bow thrusters, they've got big engines, and they can make a mess out of that bottomscape just by pulling in once or twice. And there's not, as she was pointing out, there's not that much clearance for a yacht that size. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Frederick Jones still here? Frederick Jones. So if you can come forward. And before he speaks, is there anyone else who wishes to be heard on this whose name I have not yet called? Okay, so you'll be the final speaker.
Thank you. My name is Macy Jones. I live in the Slade, and I'm going to talk about one issue because I think a lot of people have already covered the vessels and the provisioning of it. I assume the provisions will be put on these vessels from the inland waterway because you can't do it off Flagler. The real estate people are selling West Palm Beach north of the North Bridge. It goes almost all the way up, well, it goes up above Safe Harbor, or what used to be Rybovich. Lots of buildings. These are all 20-story plus buildings, and they will house an awful lot of people who will be down here to try to enjoy, I guess, West Palm Beach and Palm Beach. One of the things that happens every morning and happens all day long is traffic on Flagler Drive. It bills and bills and bills. I know it's very difficult to get across the North Bridge during peak travel or peak commuting periods of the day. You add 5 new buildings, 20-story plus, and that traffic is going to come down to West Palm Beach, to the offices being built in Palm Beach, all around the square. Financial companies are moving in every day. You already have a big building called Goldman Sachs. You're going to have Ellis, they're already there. You may have Wellington. They are right now on the Palm Beach side. But my guess is that they will move over to West Palm Beach, which is already, according to the pundits, called Wall Street South. I think that's great. It's wonderful for West Palm Beach. Now, what we're going to do is add traffic upon traffic upon traffic. Once you get below the Palm Beach Yacht Club, you have something called Rosarian Academy. That's a school. In the morning when kids get dropped off, the traffic from that school backs up above the Palm Beach Yacht Club. Now, I know that the school has bought a block of land, a whole block, just to protect themselves and to allow the kids to be a little bit safer than being dropped off on Flagler Drive. This is something I think that's really very important. It hasn't been covered by anybody here. We all love boats. We all have had boats if we're lucky. We all would like to see them. But I have to say that this project, I guess, which stretches well beyond the seawall by the Palm Beach Yacht Club, which is 400 feet, this is going way beyond that to the edge of the deep water. I think it needs to be rethought carefully, and it probably should be moved elsewhere. This private marina, if you will, is going to be owned by what?
Sir, your time's expired. If you could conclude your remarks.
Yeah, okay. And by the way, the building it's opposite is on the market, being sold. Right? So what happens if somebody moves in there? Who knows? They may not like the dock.
Thank you so much. Okay. All right. I think at this point, we will bring them back to the board for discussion. What are some of your thoughts?
Actually, I have a question for staff regarding Army Corps of Engineers and DEP. Typically, with these dock cases, we typically approve them because they've been approved and researched by Corps of Engineers and DEP. What pushback or blowback would we expect if we decide to deny this case? And what validation and justification will we have to provide beyond what's actually in this planning board document or planning board final packet? Is there some way that we would have to respond to the Corps of Engineers or DEP to explain that denial?
Rick Green, Development Services Director. I don't believe we owe the Army Corps an explanation. What we're asking the board, like any project, and as Angela mentioned earlier, we look at each case on its own merit. You would have to look at the standards, and if you wanted to vote in either direction, you would have to identify what standard is not being met.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Let's take a look at those standards closely with respect to this. Other thoughts?
I had a question. Possibly I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, the biologist, but you mentioned in your presentation that the shoreline was recessed where this proposed dock would be built. How many feet is that recession, would you estimate?
Let's take a look.
I want to say before we vote. Yeah.
Very close. We have a slide we're trying to pull up particular to the actual indent. Desktop? I think this speaks to the chairman's question as well. It was interesting for me when we were kind of going through it. All of the docks here are actually reaching the same point, and it's because they're trying to seek adequate depths. View. Bree, you may want to go back to slide 6, but I think this is the one we were actually.
Sure. I think he was asking how far back that ink comes in. I'd have to line it up in our AutoCAD to figure that out. We could probably do a simple scaling with Google Earth. I don't know. I would assume, though, that it's upwards of 100 feet if you take it from the northernmost or southernmost outward extension. But again, that's data that I could get you. I just don't have it offhand.
Okay, and you mentioned the docks are trying to reach the same endpoint, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And Bree, I think you said it's actually a historic shipping channel or something.
Yeah, that inner channel is not an official channel. It's not a federal channel. I'm sorry if I'm not speaking closely. It was historically used for shipping until they actually did the Army Corps dredged the federal channel, which is the outer channel. There's actually 2 outer channels in the 1,000 feet offshore. But that one is kind of an unofficial usage lane, but it's not officially recognized by the Army Corps.
Thank you. Gene, you have your question answered?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, we're back for discussion. Gene, let me start with you. Some initial thoughts?
I think there are mitigating and aggravating factors. Obviously, the property owner has the right to erect a dock, whether or not they're selling the property, not selling the property. I don't think we can prejudice them for that. I think one of the mitigating factors is the fact that the shoreline is recessed, and they're trying to reach a certain point. But by the same token, the public concerns, should be considered. I think, when you're talking about provisions and, traffic, so on and so forth, that's something to consider. But I think a lot of the opposition didn't want to boat at all, but the owner has that right to, erect a dock and, have a boat there.
Right.
So.
From my perspective, if we normally allow, say, 100 feet, by definition, that suggests a certain size boat, okay? This, to me, is being presented reversed. They're saying we need a boat of this scale, and now the safe way to do it would be to have it go out so far. And that's where my concerns lie, or at least in isolation. If this is part of a larger review where we're rethinking how far the dock should go and not go, but to me, the question is, are the boats they planning appropriate for this property? And if you say it is, then they make a very strong justification for going out that far. But I don't want to, those are just my initial reactions. What are your thoughts, Carla?
I think that we're at a point in our community where we need to have a defined strategy for managing that intracoastal. I think handling this on a case-by-case basis was great 20 years ago. It's just not going to work now, especially with the super marinas that are coming in. So I am very concerned, since we are operating on a case-by-case basis, about setting this kind of precedent. And I would encourage the planning staff to really look at that waterway very, very carefully and design and be more strategic in terms of these conversations.
Peter, what are some of your thoughts?
You know, we talk about super yachts, but when you look at this dock, the first 100 or so feet have at the most 5 or 6 foot clearance, and this is an average. Low tide, it's going to be probably less. No boat can dock within the 100 feet, within that area. So the limitations are in terms of where the location of the deeper portions of the channel are. And I don't think the applicant really has any choice but to extend it beyond the 100 feet to accommodate any type of yacht. I don't look at a 200-foot yacht or a 100-foot yacht, but I believe it's their right. They've met all the federal statutes, all the state approvals, and the staff is recommending approval. In a way, our hands are kind of tied because we haven't been presented with any serious new information. Yeah, we talked about operational, what's going to happen with 2 yachts and how deliveries are going to be made and so on. That's up to the city. They are recommending approval, and if they want to attach some conditions in terms of parking or lack of parking in the front of the dock or any other conditions, and the staff have to then pick up the ball. I mean, we're here to base our opinions on the information that we were given up to now. So I would tend to support the applicant.
Okay. Deborah, what are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are similar as well. Because of the request for the special use permit, they've done the research. I commend staff for going over and above to get all of the additional information, as well as for Gunster to do the in-depth research. I learned a few things from the research from the marine biologist, but I think you've done your homework and you didn't present anything negative that would go against this. And like everyone has said, they do have a right to construct this dock. You know, there's nothing that has come up that said that they cannot put a certain size boat there. And I didn't hear any evidence presented that it was going to be a danger or was going to destroy anything or cause any harm. So, you know, I'm for it.
Okay. Any other thoughts before I look for a motion? I will say, I think both Peter and Deborah, you make a very good case. I'm just not persuaded. Forgive me, but I think you make a very strong case. To me, if we were going over more than 100 feet, I have no issue with that. But how far is this extending out? 500 feet? I mean, nobody should know, but it's a very large expansion, which is not part of, I loved Carla's word, strategic, not part of a strategic kind of plan for how we're going to be dealing with this. Because I understand 10 years from now, we may have 36 of those going way out there. It's going to fundamentally change.
And I would encourage people to look at California.
Not you, I meant to the audience. This is our opportunity to speak, and we need to. But that's a big change, and I'm not necessarily opposed to it but I don't want to do it piecemeal, ass backwards. I want a part of where we're managing this and making sense of it and taking all these legitimate concerns into consideration, as well as your points that you guys made, I think are very valid. I just think that, for example, if the boat were half the size, hypothetically, they still may have to go out 100 feet, but maybe 200 feet.
Right.
That to me is something more in the realm of acceptable. But going out this far out to accommodate a much larger boat, once we allow this, how on earth do we deny the next applicant? And if we can't deny the next applicant, we fundamentally change that waterfront. And I'm open to hearing the arguments, but this is a single one. This is not part of a, how do we want there was a reason they picked 100 feet at some point. I will concede that may not be realistic anymore.
There were canoes then.
There were canoes, and that's it. Anyway, so I get it. We may have a divided vote here, and that's perfectly appropriate. Did you want to say something more? I didn't mean to cut you off.
I was actually rudely interrupting you, so I
There's no
understand. I just encourage people to look at the California coastline and the marinas there, and you can tell where there was planned strategic, dock placement and where there isn't. I spent a lot of time in California, so, that's sort of a personal concern that I've had that experience in another state, so.
So one can either make a motion for or against, if you want to do that.
So,
Can you
Mr. Chairman,
give us an indication where you're going, then we can know what motion we should make. Go ahead.
So I wanted to get your take. So do you think the applicant is disadvantaged because of the shoreline or no?
I do,
Okay.
but not by this measure. So the disadvantage, let's say 50 feet, 75 feet, 100 feet, the request goes so much beyond that. So the request before us is of a particular number, right? So I agree with you that, and there may be other extenuating circumstances. I'm fine with that on a case-by-case basis. This is just so fundamentally different, and it's being driven by the desire to have a very large boat there. And if you accept that as a premise and you work backwards, you could justify this thing right up until the channel. And if we allow that for that one, we allow it for everyone ultimately along that way. And that's a very different waterfront, that's all. And if that's gonna be done, it seems to me it should be done strategically. If we as a city decide that's the direction we wanna go, we should do it. But I don't wanna do it based on a single case under these circumstances, for me.
Mr. Chairman, can I offer a clarification, some rebuttal
You
before?
can, but sir, with respect, you've had your presentation, now it's before us, so we usually don't take any more evidence at this point. I appreciate it, but please understand our process is. So, Gene, give us some guidance, what your thinking is, because I'm thinking we're 2-2, and you're gonna be the tie-breaking vote. So, when you do it, then we'll know what motion to make. No pressure, no pressure, Gene.
You get a free yacht ride.
Can we give the applicant 30 more seconds?
You can do whatever you like, my friend.
I'd like to give the applicant 30 more seconds to respond.
Excuse me, well, excuse me, people. This is our process now. The way it goes is the applicant speaks, then the city speaks, then we hear from you, and then we hear from us. You have a tiebreaker vote here who has a question he wants answered or wants to hear something. I want to give him that opportunity because this is the gentleman who's going to decide this tonight. So if he finds it's going to be helpful for him to hear from the applicant further, I will indulge it. Go ahead.
So I'm just going to offer some clarity. The dock length is 282 feet. It's nowhere near 500 feet. It's nowhere near 416 or 350, which are the two southern adjacent private yachts. And then in terms of a rebuttal, mine's pretty simple. The question here is not a boat issue. The question is whether to authorize a dock extension.
Right.
And a dock extension is authorized by the city code when there are certain issues present. The compatibility of a private dock has already been found by the code, and the code states that an extension is authorized to seek to avoid impacts to marine environments, to avoid dredging, and to reach adequate depths. And that's what evidence has been shown to you this evening. Thank you.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Gene, what's your thought?
My gut reaction as a community member is to be against it, but principally, I think they check all the boxes. So based on the standard that we have, I don't see why we couldn't grant,
Okay, why don't one of you make the motion then?
I'll make the motion.
Okay.
I'll make the motion, Mr. Chairman. I'll move that the planning board recommend to the city commission approval of planning board case 1949, a request by John K. Rice of Gunster on behalf of 1525 North Flagler LLC for a Class A special use permit with waivers for a private dock that exceeds the length of 100 feet maximum on the subject lot located at 1525 North Flagler Drive. The motion is based upon the testimony presented at the hearing, along with the applicant submitted and the staff report, which constitute competent substantial evidence. The planning board hereby makes finding of fact that the application complies with the required standards of section 94-36E3 through 5 and sections 94-313A3 and sections 94-273A2 of the city's West Palm Beach zoning and land development regulations.
We have a motion, have we a second? I'm so sorry?
Oh, they're
Oh, you
conditions,
did
Peter.
conditions?
Yeah, read the condition.
They're conditions.
With conditions?
Oh.
So hold it. He's not finished making his motion.
All right. In addition, this recommendation is made subject to the conditions of approval contained in the staff report dated May 10th, 2023, with the further conditions that In addition, this recommendation is made subject to conditions of approval contained in the staff report dated May 10th, 2023. I move that these conditions are necessary to ensure compliance with the purpose and intent of the zoning and land development regulations and consistency with the comprehensive plan of the city of West Palm Beach.
We good with the motion? Okay. We have a second for the motion.
so before I second, I do have a point of order. I don't want to characterize my vote as a deciding vote because it's not.
Excuse me,
That's-
please,
That's not
please.
how it works. That's not how it works, and it shouldn't be characterized like that because we have a certain who are for and against, and everyone's vote is equal. So I would ask that you.
A fair point, Gene.
I would ask that you rescind that comment because it's not true.
No,
It's not
okay.
accurate.
What I meant in terms of we knew how people were voting and you were the last one.
Right.
That's all. It doesn't mean you were the one who decided it, but you were the last to reveal your vote, and therefore that turned out to be an important one.
Right.
So we have a motion. Do you want to make a second, or Deborah want to make a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? And Madam Clerk, I'm going to ask you to do a roll call vote here.
Court of order. I like to clarify, it's the June, you said May.
Okay, so will you accept the amendment?
Sure.
And will the second accept it? You were the second, forgive me. You accept the amendment to the motion from May to June or June to May,
Yes.
whatever it was, okay.
In the staff report.
All right. Now, we'll do a roll call.
Deborah Rain,
Yes.
Peter Pivko,
Yes?
Stephen Mayans,
No?
Carla Bryant,
No.
Jean Marcellus Jr.
Yes.
Okay. All right, it passes 3-2. Thank you. All right, next on our agenda.
You know, when you do all the evidence.
I love it. I know I loved it. But we would have lost still 3-2. Okay, next on the agenda is planning board cases number 1934 and 1934A. By the way, you guys made, I mean, you guys made really good points. I love it when we're dividing points, when there are good arguments on both sides. You know what I mean? That makes me feel good.
It's not the yacht.
I get it. I still think and they work backwards. But that's just me.
I know.
That killed it for me. Irrelevant. But Oop. I guess we're going to take a few minute break, it looks like.
Yeah.
Well, Carl is still there and Jean. All right, I'd like to get started.
Oh, yes, sir.
It's not your fault, sir. We were.
I saw everybody.
But we said the sound still travels in the back.
Thank you. You ready for me to begin?
If you would, please, sir.
Good evening, board members and chair. John Schmidt, agent for the applicant. We have a two-part presentation for you tonight. I'm going to do a quick introduction, then I'm going to turn it over to Jeff Jervis, who's the co-founder and CEO of Mint Echo, and then I'll take back over for some technicals, answer questions, and we'll move it on here.
All right.
Location map, we're located on Melbourne at almost the corner of Olive and Southern Boulevard. 0.157 acres that we're asking for a land use change and rezoning. Again, the formal request is for land use change for 301 Melbourne from multifamily to commercial, as well as a rezoning from multifamily 20 to general commercial. And with that, I'd like to introduce Jeff Jervis, again, co-founder and CEO, and then I'll take back over to technicals.
All right. Thank you, John. Good evening, board members. I'm Jeff Jervis, co-founder and CEO of Mint Eco Car Wash. I live in West Palm Beach, just down the street from the subject property. We stand before you today because we have a problem. This is a problem that we have desperately tried to solve ourselves in the confines of our own property without success. We're here today because we have a solution. While we have been the engine behind the solution, it is not our solution alone. It is a solution that was crafted with the input and support of the city staff and the community. The solution isn't perfect. Specifically, it's expensive, and it requires a rezoning of a residential property. But it is a solution that permanently solves the problem and has overwhelming support from all the parties involved. Before we talk about the solution, I want to take a minute to familiarize you with us, Mint Eco Car Wash. Mint Eco Car Wash is a Palm Beach County business founded at my kitchen table in West Palm Beach with a simple motto, a fresh approach to washing cars. Said differently, we are an organization that was intentionally built to focus on problems and create and effect solutions. For example, we had a customer problem. Car washes are dirty, industrial, and often broken. As the images shown here illustrate, we have embraced the issue and designed a beautiful site that uses excessive landscaping to hide our operations from the community. Today, we have the highest Google ratings in the industry and have won back-to-back Best Car Wash in Palm Beach awards from the Palm Beach Post. We had an employee problem. Car wash employees are generally unhappy, underpaid, with little opportunity for advancement. Our employees are now the highest paid in the industry. We have invested heavily in employee spaces at our sites and have developed a robust Promote from Within program. We have payrolls in excess of $1 million on our site. We score above 90% on our quarterly internal employee satisfaction surveys and have won 2 Department of Defense awards for our support of the Guard and Reserves, and recently won the honor of Best Places to Work in Southeast Florida by the Sun Sentinel, an honor I've never heard of a car wash winning. We had a community problem. Our industry generally ignores the community and has an adversarial relationship with its neighbors. Mint Eco, however, embraces the community. We support all educational, religious, and charitable organizations within a 3-mile radius of our site and have given over $175,000 to these organizations so far this year. We also wash first responders for free, including all municipal police and fire vehicles, and have performed dozens of beach, park, and neighborhood cleanups, specifically in this area. We had an environmental problem. Our industry views its relationship with the environment as a zero-sum game, believing that what is good for the environment is bad for business. We disagree. We recycle all of our water and use only environmentally friendly chemistry. We look at everything we do, down to our compostable coffee pods and our bamboo toilet paper. Earlier this year, we published our first voluntary annual environmental self-audit, an industry first. We were the runner-up for 2 Environmental Business of the Year awards from local chambers of commerce, and we have been asked and have accepted an invitation to sit on the Mayor's Sustainability Advisory Committee, Again, accolades not typically reserved for car washes. In summary, we're a business that does not accept the status quo. We challenge everything, and this is the same approach we took to the issue that we are here today to discuss. What is the problem? As you can see here on this slide, this is an image of our existing site, and we've queued up some traffic to show you what happens when we get really busy. On our site, we have the ability to queue 3 to 4 cars. We did a traffic study, and at peak times, we can have up to 7 cars. The maximum amount observed was that 7 cars will queue up for our site. The problem is when 7 cars queue up for our site, that means that at least 3 of them, and maybe 4 of them, are outside of our site, causing the congestion that you see both on Olive and Southern Boulevards. And there's no way for anybody to get around this traffic because there's only 1 southbound lane and 3 northbound lanes that are often filled with turning cars. And so it's a disaster. You can see some images here of pictures that were taken in our traffic study showing you what happens. So we asked ourselves, how can we solve this problem, right? And we looked to ourselves for the solution. Can we revise circulation? Can we go exterior only? Can we eliminate our office on the property? Can we reverse the tunnel? Can we relocate the building? Can we abandon this location? Can we increase prices? Can we look at peak pricing? Can we remove services? Can we relocate staff? Can we add a second story to the property? And none of these ideas that we looked at were feasible. There were, however, several ideas that were feasible that we did enact, and we spent over $1 million since we purchased the site in order to address this traffic problem specifically. We put new tunnel equipment in that increased the speed of our tunnel from 60 cars an hour to 120 cars an hour. We upgraded our point of service, our pay stations, technology, and now we have, instead of a static pay station where somebody had to drive up in order to be serviced, we have Chick-fil-A tablets and we have multiple greeters that will walk down the line and service cars irrespective of where they are in the queue. We increased the number of staff and added more greeters and loaders. When we purchased this site, the maximum staff in a March weekend would be 13 people. Our maximum staff this March on a weekend day was 25 people, almost 100% increase in the staffing levels. We improved the efficiency of our detailing and interior services. And specifically, we redesigned our entire interior service, and now a service that used to take 30 to 45 minutes takes under 20 minutes. We also extended our hours and staff shifts. Our hours were 9 to 5, and we've extended our hours to 7 to 7, which is a 50% increase in our hours. And so we have done what we believe to be every feasible thing in order to address this problem. However, we weren't successful. This problem persists despite our material financial investment and all of our efforts. So we looked outside of our site, and we went to the city and we said, look, we can't solve this problem on our site. Can you help us? In particular, as you can see in the image here, can we redesign the southern side of this intersection? So instead of a single lane south and 3 lanes going northbound, can we redesign it as 2 lanes going south and 1 lane going northbound, allowing, if there was ever a situation where cars did queue up in front of our site, allowing cars to get around? This idea was rejected because it did not comply with the city's rules, specifically their rules on traffic remerging before the median that's to the south here. We also looked, when we did start contemplating that we needed to look outside of our site, we looked at, instead of rezoning this property, we looked at having a Class B use for multifamily zoning so that we could put a parking lot and a driveway on this site. And we also looked at split zoning, which is something that was also rejected. So what's the solution that we ultimately landed on? Well, before we get to that, I want to get to the criteria that we set for ourselves when we said that we couldn't solve this problem ourselves. And they were 3. 1, whatever we did had to permanently solve the problem. We couldn't be back in front of the community, we couldn't be back in front of the city again in a year or two saying that despite our efforts, it didn't work. Number 2, we needed city support. And number 3, we needed community support. Without those 3 things, we were not willing to make the financial investment in order to pursue this. What was the solution we came up with? It's a $1.5 million project. Again, in addition to the $1 million we've already invested to try and save this. which we call the 301 Malvern solution. And as you can see in the image here, what's happened is that we're purchasing the property on the southeast corner of our site, right, which is 301 Malvern. And we're very carefully making sure that we're not putting any car wash operations on this site. It's simply an extension of our driveway, and it's simply moving the entrance to the property and the exit to the property from 75 feet away from Southern Boulevard to now closer to 175 feet away from Southern Boulevard. Again, being very careful to make sure that the access and egress to this property that is on Olive currently remains on Olive. Our plan has a total of 18 queuing spaces. I mentioned today we have 3 to 4 queuing spaces. We did a traffic study at the request of the city, and the maximum observed number of cars that were at the site that ever queued up for the site were 7. We are very confident that this, therefore, is a permanent solution with 18 queuing spaces, an increase of 14 spaces from where we stand today. In addition, we moved the exit 100 feet south on Olive Avenue. We provide for employee parking, as you can see in orange here, all on our site. We keep the turn lane on Olive clear, right? And we're converting our office in the back of the site. We're converting our office into a detail center, removing all of the office, or we've already removed all of the office employees that were adding additional traffic to the site, away from the site, and expanding our services for detail, which would make them quicker and less invasive and less impactful to the site. Oops. So, what about the community and the city support? Well, we had a 3-phase plan, and the 3-phase plan is illustrated here with the boxes. The first phase was we wanted to go to the local neighborhood association, CENA, and also to all the residents that were in 500 feet of our property. And we wanted to make sure that at least that core group was in support and understood our project, right? We started on May 9th with presenting to the CENA board. We then received on May 11th a letter of support from CENA. On August 7th, we mailed voluntarily, this is not the city mailings, these are our own mailings. We mailed to the 500-foot radius on August 7th. I believe this was 135 letters that were sent out to the 135 properties, both residential and commercial, that were within that zone. We then went out in 3 teams, a team led by myself, a team led by our president, and a team led by our chief marketing officer, and we knocked on every single door inside that 500-foot radius. And we came away with 185 letters of support. How can you mail 135 letters and get 185 letters of support? Because this is mostly a rental area, and so there are multiple units within each one of these addresses, and so you can have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units, and that's how that happened. Right? We then, after all of this, we noticed and held a public meeting, voluntary, right? Held a public meeting, invited everybody within 500 feet to come and give us their comments. We had no objection at that meeting. We had complete support. People gave us ideas that we incorporated into our site plan. And ultimately, that adjusted site plan is what we moved forward with in phase 2. In phase 2, we went out to a broader group of people. We went out to the historic Prospect Park neighborhood to the north of the site, as well as to residents beyond the 500-foot radius. On September 6th, we mailed 3,700 letters to the broader community. We followed that up with 4 days with multiple teams of door knocking and knocked on September 12th, 13th, 14th, and 15th. We knocked on over 1,000 doors. And those efforts yielded us 1,112 additional letters of support from the community, including a letter from the Historic Prospect Park Community Group. We responded to an article, or we responded to inquiries from the press. On September 15th, we contributed to an article that was written in the Palm Beach Post about it, trying to get the word out about what we were doing. We also presented at multiple board meetings for both CENA in September, as well as for HPSNA, and ultimately made the final decision in October to move forward with our project and address this now with the second constituency, the city. We began our process and submitted with the city in October of 22. We attended more CENA meetings during this process, sent out an update letter to the community, telling them the results of our meeting with the city, was that the city, which gave us additional conditions, in particular putting the turn lane in and some other additional conditions that we incorporated into the site plan. We then sent out that letter to another 3,700 residents, including everybody that we talked to before, letting them know what was going on, right? We had multiple additional meetings in March and in April with the SENA and HPS PNA boards. And then we received residential support letters throughout that period of time, ultimately a letter of support from HPS PNA. And then, to bring us to where we are today, on June 5th, we went through the public process of notification to the 500-foot radius in advance of these hearings. In closing, we had a problem, and this is a solution that is desperately needed. While we've tried our best to solve the problem ourselves on our site, we've not been successful. We, however, still take ownership of finding a solution. The solution we propose is not our own. I'll say it again, the solution we propose is not our own. This solution is the solution of Mintico Car Wash, the city of West Palm Beach, and the community, and the overwhelming majority of the community. As a group, we respectfully ask for your approval of this solution, and I'll turn it over to John to go through the technical details.
Thank you.
Before I do want to hand over, we've delivered these to the mayor as well.
Did you want to show your maps? You didn't get to your...
Oh, I didn't get to my maps.
support?
Oh, I'm
No.
sorry. Sorry, I've left something out of my presentation. So this is a map of the neighborhood, and you can see this is the 500-foot radius. You can see green are properties that we've received letters of support from. And then the broader map showing the 1,294 letters can be shown. Here are letters. And then the broader map can be shown here, where we have, this is the total of, you see the little green dots and then the circles, which represent more than one letter from a single address. We have 1,294 letters of support. So thank you very much, and I'll deliver these to the clerk. By the way, these are letters of support, and we did get 6 letters of dissent. That's a ratio of 1 to 215.
Not enough.
Thank you. Just to proceed forward, the corner of Olive and Southern, looking back from 1950 to 2011, there was originally a gas station there, the Valero gas station. 2011, you can see the Rubber Ducky car wash that they've currently purchased, and what they've transformed it to under today's their own standards. This was the original car wash that was approved in 2011 as a Class B use and is up and operating today, again under Mintico, not previous Rubber Ducky. The existing and proposed future land use, we're asking for you to amend the current land use from MF to C. It's 1.75 acres located at the corner of Malvern and Olive. It has about 100 feet of frontage along Olive Avenue. We're also asking for a rezoning from MF20 to general commercial. We meet all the standards, the comprehensive policies of 1.1.5 and 1.16, change projections, the trends towards eco-friendly behaviors. Fewer people are washing their cars now and going to car washes. If you look at some just general numbers, to wash your car in your driveway, it's about 140 gallons. They do it about at 70, and of that 70, about 35 gallons are recycled water. So it's a much more economically friendly versus, again, a driveway where you don't really have any chemical reduction and it's going into our stormwater system. So it's a much better, friendlier way to wash your car. West Palm Beach population has boomed, and we have major traffic volumes have increased in the area. Change assumptions, again, 90% of car owners use these facilities versus 50% just 30 years ago. FDOT prohibits driveways on the main roads, and when alternatives exist, you should use a secondary street, which is Olive and existing today. Again, higher traffic volumes on Olive and Southern, and the commercial development is anticipated at major corners. When we meet policies 1.1.6, and we meet policies A through H of the rezoning standards. We have a problem that we're trying to solve. This may be an atypical request, but we're solving an existing problem. You see many projects up here. We represent many projects, and I've never seen the community outreach and support that I've had for this one, so I really commend them and their efforts. But to accomplish this solution, we respectfully ask for your support for the comprehensive plan amendment, the rezoning. Our testimony tonight, I'd like to be entered into the record. I'd like to reserve some time if there's some concerns later on, and we respectfully ask for your permission to proceed forward. We have our team here, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, may we hear from staff?
Good evening, Planning Board. For the record, Kevin DeFrank, Senior Planner with the Development Services Department. And I will be presenting staff's findings and recommendations for the subject agenda item, which involves the future land use map amendment and rezoning requests to allow for the Mint Eco Car Wash expansion proposal to the subject property located at 301 Malvern Road, which includes only one parcel that has a current future land use designation of multifamily and a zoning designation of multifamily medium density residential, MF20, which currently contains an existing duplex. And as stated before, the proposed future land use map amendment request is to change the future land use map amendment or future land use designation from multifamily to commercial. And the second request is to rezone the subject property from MF20 to GC, general commercial, to allow for the expansion of the existing car wash use on the adjacent property to the north to the subject property, which involves expanding the vehicle use area, which would also involve removing the existing duplex, as seen in the site plan. So staff's findings include that the first request, the future land use map amendment request, would eliminate the allowance for any residential use, but allow for non-residential uses, and therefore would increase the development potential for the subject property. However, the impact on the public facilities, not including the traffic-related public facilities, are expected to be insignificant. And for the second request, the rezoning request, the proposed zoning designation is found to be consistent with the proposed future land use designation. And staff also finds that the proposed zoning designation is compatible with the zoning and the land use pattern within the area. And also, staff is recommending conditions of approval that requires that a Class B special use permit approval and an informal site plan review approval must be obtained for the proposed car wash expansion. In addition, staff's findings include that the future land use map amendment request is consistent and complies with the new issue standard according to the future land use amendment standards found in the city's comp plan. And the rezoning request is in compliance with all the rezoning standards, all 8 rezoning standards found in the city's zoning and land development regulations. And staff's findings also include that over 100 letters of support were provided by the applicant for properties within 500 feet of the subject property, and 1 letter of opposition was provided by residents within the immediate area. And today, staff received 3 email correspondences expressing opposition to the subject request, which I printed out for you all. And based on the information provided by the applicant, the evidence gathered by staff, and the review and analysis conducted by staff. Staff recommends an approval of the PB case number 1934 and approval with conditions of PB case number 1934A. And here are the conditions of approval recommended by staff, which have been indicated in the staff report. And that concludes staff's presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
Okay, any questions of staff? Let me start with you, Gene. Carla?
No questions at the moment.
Yes, but it may be more for the applicant because I would like for them to go to their first presentation. I have a specific question about slide 13.
Okay, why don't we
Oh,
finish
so,
up with that
okay.
first, and we'll have you brought
Then-
back up.
then no with
Okay,
staff,
just a
sorry.
moment. First, any questions of staff? Peter, any questions? Deborah, okay. All right, no other questions, and now why don't we bring the applicant back up to have your question answered?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about slide 13, a great job of, getting the community engaged. But I want to talk about buffers and barriers. Well, you'll see when you get to slide 13. And the visual really helps tremendously. Yeah, this here. So let's just take a few minutes to help me to make sure I'm understanding what's going on here. Right, you're buying that adjacent property. It drives the traffic to Malvern. How are you, so my question would be, if I were living across the street on Malvern, is now I'm dealing with increased noise, and traffic. How are you at least, it looks like you're setting up some barriers and buffers there. How are you addressing the issue of now moving, that problem more into the neighborhood?
So, based on some neighborhood meetings, what you're finding here is, yes, we're pushing our entrance down further on Olive, but one issue that when we talked to people in Melbourne is they didn't want to see an exit out of Melbourne. Staff originally wanted us to put wanted us to go on that secondary street, but the neighbors, respectfully weren't having that. Our buffer that we're providing along there is 60% larger than code. It has considerable landscaping, and I can go into those, landscaping details if you want to put those further. But we are pushing that, we are grabbing that down there. But that's allowing for all the stack then to happen on here, which is 3 times as much as we've seen in the traffic reports.
Right.
We submitted this in October. We spent it's been quite a while. We spent 3 months out in the field counting traffic, going back and forth and doing really in-depth studies with, the east and west traffic, the north and south traffic, and it really felt that this was the best solution that we can come up with.
So these buffers are going all around.
That's
the
correct.
property
And
here.
I can go to that slide for you. Just bear with me here. There's I'm almost got to do an animation here. So almost 500 planting, 33 trees, 177 shrubs. We are extending a wall around there. These properties, there's not a new property that's being bordered by this car wash. Every property that's touching is already bordered by the car wash. So we're extending that wall around the corner there, providing considerable amounts of landscaping. Again, all the plantings, 25% of the site is green space. We've got the wall, and then again, a 60% increase in the width right along Malvern to try to mitigate that impact. And then, you can see the job that they do about, screening their operations.
Right.
So,
Okay.
thank you.
Josh, can I ask you while you have that slide up, if you could put that one down, the Mint Echo one, it was explained to us that none of the facilities were going to be on this new lot. It was just strictly for traffic. Is there an ongoing restriction for that? I mean, so it doesn't change in the future?
No, we just, we were wanted to be considerate of noise and make the least amount of impact.
No, I understand the way it's designed, no issue. I'm just talking about, say, 5 years from now, they decide they want to build another facility at that. Would they have that right? Is that limited?
So we would be changing the land use and the zoning to commercial.
So you have to come back to us?
So they would, depending on the use.
Yeah.
So uses, like for instance, retail and office are permitted uses.
Right.
I mean, more impactfully, I get it, they are, I'm sorry.
We would be happy to live with
No,
with
I didn't mean
restriction.
to impose it, I just wanted to know whether that would come before us
A
again.
gas station or a fast food is a Class B use.
Right.
But they would really have to come to you because the Class B uses have a 100-foot separation from any residential
Okay.
any residential property. So it would have to go through this whole process.
I understand that's not in the cards now, I was just curious whether there was some protection on that, that's all.
No, there
Okay.
isn't.
All right.
They would have to come through this process.
Okay, all right.
As indicated in the staff report, our proposed condition of approval to obtain a Class B special use permit would address that issue.
Okay, terrific. Thank you for that explanation. All right. Any other questions then? If not, we'd like to hear from the public. And we're going to have, do we have the timer working presently? Oh, good, okay. So 2 at this lectern, 2 at that lectern. On this lectern, if we hear from, is that Michael, is Semper, something along those lines? There's a 121 Potter. Michael, are you here? If you come down to that lectern and behind, and Robert Kelly behind him at this lectern, if we could have, it looks like it's David Supple and then Carrie Diaz. So those 2 at this lectern, and you can begin, sir. Please state your name for the record.
Thank you, Michael Semler. I've lived in the neighborhood for just over 6 years and seen the evolution of the subject site, and have been very cognizant of the efforts of the ownership to try to figure out the admittedly very difficult issue that they've had, and have been extremely impressed with their efforts, their expenditure, their time and diligence on trying to solve this problem, and have been, very satisfied. The questions I've asked the ownership throughout the process, because I've also, been in that, 3 or 4 car line a few times and had very specific questions about them. So I'm very much supportive of this as a resident, and very happy that they're there because they serve a great, service to the community. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sir, state your name for the record.
My name is Robert Kelly. I live at 140 Seville Road. I have lived in the south of southern neighborhood for in excess of 30 years. I've lived through when it was a mobile station, a Valero station, a rubber ducky. And due to the popularity of Mint Eco, the area has gotten very congested. It's become dangerous if you're proceeding east on Southern Boulevard, trying to take a right into our neighborhood. I think the efforts that this group is making to purchase the land at their own expense and make it safer for everybody is commendable, and I agree with what they're doing.
Thank you, sir. May I hear from you?
Yes. Hello, my name is David Supple, and I'm in support of this. I've known the owners and the operations that they serve, and concur with everything that's been said about the way that they treat their employees and treat the operations, and just very supportive of all this. So.
Thank you, sir. Carrie D. Diaz, if you come forward, and at this lectern, if we could have Violeta Diaz.
I represent both.
I'm so sorry?
Yes, we are the owner of the 300 Malvern.
Okay, ma'am, I'm just trying to line up other people speaking. So, Violeta Diaz, are you here tonight? If you could come forward to that lectern, and after you, please, at that lectern, if we could have.
Violeta Diaz is not here, and her daughter, and we are both owners.
Okay, so they're not going to speak then, you're going to speak for them?
No, I'm the only
Okay.
one.
All right, I'm just trying to line up speakers, that's
Yes.
all. So if we have you covering that, then Melinda Kennedy, are you here this evening? If you could come to that lectern, and behind you, if we could hear from Marilla Holt. Okay, ma'am, go ahead now.
Okay. I'm Caridad Diaz, I'm the owner of 300 Malvern. I do not support the project because it's going to be right in front of our apartments. There are 2 apartments, the 300, and the one they are purchasing is the 301. So it's right in front of our apartments. I believe that if they change the zoning, the value of our property is going to be lower. So that's the reason why I don't want it. It's not going to look, it's right in front of our property. That's my point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So hello, my name is Melinda A. Kennedy. I go by Abby. I want to thank the owner here for everything that he's done. I live and work remotely at 211 Coniston Road. That's my home. I own it. I hear honking. I hear aggression. I have friends come over and they're like, oh, I'm like, oh my goodness. I hope that we can solve this issue. It is so dangerous. I ride my bike there. My kids ride their bikes there. That congestion is out of this world. And I thank you so much for everything. I was one of the people, they knocked on my door and I said, I'll do anything. I'll show up here, rain or shine. Came through that storm. But I want to thank everyone for taking this into consideration. What a phenomenal company. What a great give back to our society and the kids. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, at this lectern, if we could have Cecilia Cochran and Jeff Smith at this lectern. Go ahead, ma'am. If you could state your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Mary Lee Holt. I live in the neighborhood a couple of blocks south of the car wash, and I'm in strong support of the rezoning. I drive through that intersection on multiple times a day, and this would be a service to the community and the neighborhood. I support this proposal for additional reasons. It's my firsthand impression, because I have been through the car wash multiple times. This is a really very efficiently run business, and I definitely appreciate that. And I feel like what they're doing is only meant to benefit the neighborhood. These are people that live in this neighborhood. This isn't, McDonald's trying to come in and I need more space to put my drive-through. These people live in our neighborhood. They live in our community. Making everybody mad at them does not serve anyone's interests. So they're genuine when they say, they're trying to alleviate a neighborhood problem, and they're doing it at their own expense, and they've done so much work to do that. So I think that's important, and I appreciate the fact that I've also grown up in this community for the entirety of my life, and this business, that whole corridor is going to be redeveloped, and you want successful businesses there. You drive by Mid-Eco Car Wash at night, and it's lit beautifully, but to keep it, safe, but not like there's no light pollution or anything. It's clean, it's pristine. It closes, like fairly early. This is the kind of business that we want in that community, and they should be supported and elevated.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, at this lectern, if we could have Katie Lillis and Sean Heiniger. Go ahead, ma'am, if you could go forward, state your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Cecilia Cochran, and I live in the Soso community. I, too, have lived in this area my whole life. The one thing that frustrates me is trying to turn onto South Olive from Southern, especially during season when the traffic is out of control. It feels really dangerous. And when I saw the plans and I saw what they're planning on doing, I thought, wow, this is going to be a good thing for our neighborhood. And I think it's really important that they've taken the initiative to do that. They also do voluntary beach cleanups. They clean up our neighborhood. We don't ask them to do that. They just do it. They're just a good company. They're eco-friendly. And I think what they're doing is really, it benefits our neighborhood. So I support it.
Thank you. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Katie Lillis, and I too live in the neighborhood. I'm fully in support of this. I drive past there multiple times a day as well. I don't really have anything new or different to say about what a great company they are, but I wanted to voice my support.
Thank you. All right, is Mr. Smith here? Jeff Smith? Okay. How about Julia Spurlock? Are you here? Julia? Okay. How about Joseph?
Julia's coming.
I'm sorry? Oh, it was great. Okay, sir, would you please state your
I'm
name?
Sean Heiniger. I'm here for two reasons. One, I'm a resident over 50 years in the community. I've witnessed a couple of car accidents at this intersection. It's absolutely a hazard that needs to be corrected. I'm also the acting president of Prospect Southland Park Historic Neighborhood Association, have been for 5 years. And we are in full support of this. This company's done an amazing job. Clearly, you can tell by the presentation and the time, this should be approved. And I think, and I hope other businesses in the community will take notice of this and follow the same process. They've done a great job, and hopefully you approve this. Thank you.
Okay, Joseph Sterrett and George Canto at this lectern, please go ahead, miss.
My name is Julia Spurlock. My family and friends own properties along Melbourne Road, and I'm in opposition to the rezoning of Mint Inco's rezoning. I think that this project only encourages more traffic throughout a small neighborhood. Mint Inco isn't a neighborhood car wash. It's not something that's in harmony with the neighborhood. It's a big, large-scale operation, and I think that Mint Inco is trying to find a way to integrate itself into our peaceful neighborhood. So, yes, that's my point.
Thank you for your comments. If we could have Tom Gallagher at this lectern and Ross Harness. All right, sir, if you could state your name, please proceed.
Hello, my name is Joseph Steyert. I live at 330 Malvern Road. So I live on that block where the Mint Echo is going to be taking that piece of property. So I just live, just a few houses down. I'm totally opposed of it. I'm sure they're doing great things with the community, and I applaud that, but I just don't think it's fair that the city can make changes to my street and shorten, the neighborhood from a residential to a commercial. I still have concerns about the traffic, even though it may improve the traffic a little bit. I still have concerns about that. But I'm also concerned about other businesses wanting to expand from the other direction. There's a restaurant, Flanagan's. What if they want to expand? And later on down the road, what if they want to expand again? They're going to take another space. Again, I just don't think it's fair for the city to really don't take my, considerations from people like me, property owners, of how it will affect them. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir. All right, if you could please state your name, sir.
Certainly. I'm Tom Gallagher. I reside at 251 Palmetto Lane in the neighborhood called Soso. I built my house there 20 years ago. I've observed over the 20 years the evolution of the axis running down South Dixie with some delight at the businesses that have sprung up along there, and the businesses that have been rehabbed, the businesses that have been rebuilt. I won't repeat what others have said about the responsibility and initiative of this applicant. I think the issue is larger than that. I think that we would be unwise to discourage investment in solving the problem that's created by a successful business. I think that sends the wrong message to business, and I think it's a message that will rocket us back to what I remember as a sun-bleached and dustier past. Thank you very much.
You. All right. I have George Cordo had a comment here. This is a private equity strategy that's common to use operational challenges as an excuse to change land use. This increases the value of the land at our expense. They will eventually flip the portfolio of car washes to a developer. I know this because I too worked in private equity. Ross Harness, is that you, sir? Okay. Sandy, and forgive me, I don't know how you write your name, dear, but I can't make it out. It's a long last name. Please, if you could come forward. I'm sorry? And then someone named Burrell. He says opposition to, are you here, Burrell? Yes. Okay, if you come forward and behind that lectern as well. Okay, sir, if you could.
Hi, Ross Harness of 36 and Spruce. Admittedly, I'm not from the neighborhood, but I'm disappointed to hear that nobody's had the discussion of destroying a duplex here. We're destroying a duplex and replacing it with a driveway. Are we in a driveway or a parking or a car wash crisis in this city, or are we in a housing crisis? This duplex is some of the most affordable living in this city or in this country is going to have. And respectfully, the people that have gone before me that have been here for 30, 50 years or however long, they live in their property. They're not trying to find new places to live. I have friends and colleagues that can't find affordable places to live. And by taking this duplex out of the circulation, it's going to make it even harder. Further, I do have a interest in this because as a taxpayer of the city, I'm now going to be subsidizing a car wash. The parking lot or the driveway is going to be taxed at a much lower level than the duplex is currently, and that hole in the budget has to come from somewhere. Further, the county just passed a $200 million bond. Those 2 units are going to get replaced somehow. Again, county level taxpayers subsidizing a car wash. Respectfully, sounds like your business is a great business. I applaud you for that, but this isn't about the business. This is about how we treat our land use. This is about having homes for people instead of cars. And finally, he said himself he wanted a permanent solution. There's no guarantees here that this is a permanent solution. This is a human behavior problem. People aren't respectful of their neighbors by sitting in the street. We're not going to solve that by giving them larger driveways. The current traffic study says there's a maximum of 7, but that's going to extend because the same people that are willing to sit in the street today and block traffic are going to be willing to sit in the street and block traffic if the driveway is twice as long. We're not going to, there's no guarantee that this is a permanent solution, but it is a guarantee that we're going to remove a duplex from circulation, and I think that's an atrocity. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, it's his lectern. If we could have Longween Roth, and then after that, Natalie Cactano. Go ahead, sir, if you could state your name.
My name is Bo Spurlock, and I own 229 Malvern Road and 230 Malvern Road, which is my home for 21 years. For the record, I've been a landscape architect, licensed landscape architect in Florida for 23 years, for what that's worth. Minico has created a traffic problem that we all want to go away. However, the solution that they propose to get traffic flow back to normal and fix their self-imposed hardship is advantageous for them and negative for the community in the long term. The residents of Malvern Road, Nottingham Boulevard, and Pine Terrace all live within the MF20 zoning district. This multifamily residential district acts as an important buffer which protects the single-family residential streets to the south, like Worth Court, Edmore Road, and Murray Road, and beyond, from the commercial uses along Southern Boulevard. If 301 Malvern Road is rezoned, it will be the first property ever to be zoned commercial on South Olive Avenue, south of Southern Boulevard. This sets a terrible precedent for future rezonings in the neighborhood. It's not difficult to imagine a developer pursuing similar MF20 to commercial rezonings both west and east of Olive Avenue, locations where multifamily already abut commercial. Potential rezonings in this neighborhood would become low-hanging fruit and easier to justify after a Mint Eco's approval. From a site development standpoint, the proposed expansion leaves much to be desired. It should be shocking to us all that Mint Eco proposes to remove an approximately 70-foot long section of our beloved South Olive streetscape just to build a turn lane into their car wash. The large section they propose to remove is currently planted with 2 mature oak trees, which help screen the subject property from view. The loss of public green space will erode the character and beauty of this pedestrian-friendly street, an amenity that has benefited so many in the South End neighborhood. Furthermore, the addition of a 5th lane of pavement on Olive Avenue is not what the intersection nor the South End needs. This is a car-centered solution for a car-centered use, not necessarily in harmony with the pedestrian-friendly character of the neighborhood. Approximately 78% of the subject site will be covered in pavement based on the proposed plan, and it will be the center of vehicular activity on the site. The required separation between their proposed entrance and Malvern Road doesn't even come close to the city's standards for separation and requires a waiver from the city. With these issues in mind, combined with the fact that they are making a huge ask to rezone residential to commercial, it's inconceivable to me that Mint Eco proposes code minimum landscape buffers along Malvern Road, along Olive Avenue, buffers that will never screen the high-intensity activities beyond the adjacent roadways, nor from the residential properties beyond. There are no screen walls, the buffers aren't wide enough, and there's just not enough landscaping. And no decorative amenities like special paving, ornamental lighting, or a decorative gate to screen the interior of the site after business hours. This is a net negative solution for the neighborhood to fix a problem Mint Eco created themselves.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Okay, at this lectern, if we could have Longwin Roth and Natalie Catano.
Good evening. I'm Lomduan Roth. I lived on 217 Malvern Road. It's on the east side of Olive. The nature of my job is house call service. I have to get on and off I-95 all the time. And the traffic from Mint Eco business just block the traffic, and I miss my appointments all the time. I can't get to my destination timely. Thank you.
Thank you. Mercedes Alvarez and Galen Brennan, if you could be at this lectern. Let me read a comment in. And Natalie Catano had written, I am extremely opposed. Oh, you're here? Oh, you're going to say, sorry. Go ahead, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Natalie Caetano. I'm a resident of Malvern Road and have been a resident of the neighborhood for over 30 years. I'm opposed to the Mint Eco Car Wash rezoning proposal. The car wash claims to be a neighborhood-friendly business, but I've never seen a single employee attempt to mitigate the chaos caused by their customers. On the streets of Olive and Southern. There's even signs placed directly on Olive and Southern that read, do not block the intersection. However, the intersection is blocked all the time, disregarding the traffic control device. Never even seen law enforcement enforce the obvious violations that occur multiple times a day. Their proposition of expanding their driveway will not solve the issue, but bring it closer into our neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am, if we could hear from you now, state your name for the record.
Yes, Mercedes Alvarez. If we could please pull up the drawings, the renditions.
I don't know, ma'am. This is your chance for comments. So these are the presentations.
I want to speak about the
Okay.
about the drawings.
Why don't you just describe it?
Okay, I hope that you all read my letter.
We received.
You received it. I would love for you to read it. I own the 3 properties that abut this car wash. Okay, not only are they abutting behind me, but now they're gonna be on my building on the east side of my property. So all of this, I counted at least 18 cars in this drawing. Imagine 18 cars with their engines running for a period of 10 to 15 minutes. The wind usually blows from the east to the west, so I'm gonna be getting all this fume, all this noise, the extra lighting that is gonna be disturbing the adjacent properties. And needless to say, the traffic is still gonna back up northbound, because when people are traveling northbound and you have a cutoff in the center between Olive and Pine Terrace, and Nottingham, I'm sorry, there's gonna be 1-lane traffic. So if you wanna turn, if I wanna go there and turn left and there's traffic, I'm gonna be holding traffic back northbound also to come into this place. So I totally opposed of it. I stated it in my letter, and I hope that you consider this, because I have put my heart and soul into these properties, and they are model properties on the street. I also own 301 Nottingham, and I own 323 Pine Terrace, which also adjacent to this. And by the way, I only received 1 letter. So out of all the letters that he might have sent out, I don't know what happened, but I only got 1 letter, and that was from January. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And at that lectern, if we could have Ryan Beckett and Nancy Pullman. Go ahead, sir, state your name for the record.
Yes, it's Galen Brandon. Good evening, Chairman and members of the board. My name is Galen Brandon. I live at 214 Malvern Road. I've come here tonight to speak in opposition of the request that's being made. I was one of the signatories of the neighborhood opposition letter was sent in. I'm not going to rehash all those arguments. I'd rather just give you some perspective that I've gained from these last few months. So for like the last 6 months, I've spoken to over 50 individuals in the neighborhood. by myself, walking through the neighborhood, talking to neighbors. What became abundantly clear through my conversation with neighbors is that everyone agreed that the traffic problem created by the car wash was a big issue, and everyone very much wanted something to be done. However, the solution that's being proposed tonight, I think, is a bad plan, and I also think it has not been effectively communicated to the neighborhood. And the reason I say that is because I have spoken with many individuals in the neighborhood that weren't even aware that the lot on Malvern Road was going to be permanently rezoned to commercial based on this plan. Some people were aware that they were possibly going to use it with some exemption to increase the space there. And some of these people even signed a letter of support for Medico, and some of these people are even here today in opposition for it. And then the number one reason that I was told by the neighbors that they did oppose the plan was for this very reason, that the commercial rezoning was just setting a very bad precedent for the neighborhood that they thought it'd be too much. With that being said, the whole reason we are here today, once again, is because of the traffic issue that the car wash has more or less been able to externalize into the neighboring community. In their justification for this project, they're using the traffic issue as the reason why they should be given more space to operate. However, the traffic issue can't really be used as justification. It's really a self-imposed hardship. This business operates on a half-acre lot. If they wanted to increase their queue size, they would have an opportunity to do so somewhere else on the lot, reconfigure existing setup. They have chosen not to do that. In fact, they actually closed their entrance on Southern Boulevard so that all traffic was forced into onto Olive Avenue. The business was fully aware when they purchased the lot. This was a recent acquisition, the last few years. They were fully aware of the limitations that the lot would provide with their business. And I think it's important to note that prior to them purchasing it, there was another car wash there that was able to operate without impacting the neighborhood. I think it's simply, it cannot be used as justification for this huge ask of rezoning the residential property. Medico also claims further support for this project based on the letters that they've received from the community, but honestly, based on my conversations with my neighbors in the immediate vicinity, I don't see 100 letters of support. I see 100 letters of people that really that are fed up with the traffic problem, and they want it to simply go away. Those letters could have said that they're going to move the car wash to Georgia, and the same amount of people would have signed it, if not more people would have signed it.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your comments. All right. It is Richard Pinsky and Gary York. If you can come up to one of the podiums. Go ahead, sir. State your name.
Hello, my name is Ryan Beckett. I live at 241 Malvern Road. I am a 20-year real estate broker, own my own brokerage, adjunct professor sometimes at PBA at the business school. That previous comment was actually perfect. A lot of talk car wash, but I think there's a little whitewash going on because with all due respect to my neighbors that live a handful of blocks down, they want the same problem solved that we want solved, which living there for 10 years was not a problem with the previous car wash at all. Great neighbors. So when you see accidents almost happen, when you can't get on your street on Malvern, when employees are blocking your driveway, and you're on your way to work, and they give you a letter, just so we're clear on what a letter is. I never wrote a letter. I'm 500 feet away. My house was labeled green. I was on my way to work, solving the traffic problem. How was it presented to me? Solve the traffic problem. I did not understand a rezoning, did not understand moving traffic, did not understand that you can see the difference on opinion on people that live south because they're only affected by the traffic problem. If you're Malvern, you're affected by your property values. You're affected by precedent of Flanagan's, other businesses. Cafe Sapori, it's a great neighbor. They don't line people on Southern. They came up with valet. So what I would say is that people that are more affected, like you've heard here tonight, in the immediate vicinity whose property values will be hurt, that is the big problem. I'd also like to speak on behalf of my neighbor, who's a dear friend, a recent widow. Her husband would be absolutely rolling over in his grave. She lives directly adjacent from this. Her bedroom is second floor, so instead of seeing a residential property, catty corner, she'll be looking at a driveway to a car wash. So That's why I'm in opposition to it. Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
Ms. Pullman, nice to see you again. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Nancy Pullum. I live on Belmont in the city. I'm here because I had the experience of being asked to come and meet with the people at Mint Echo. And I parked. Their parking for their staff is in leased space at the Greek Orthodox Church. So I parked there and I walked. Malvern is 2 blocks long. It's not a big street. And I walked the street. So I really got a bird's eye view with a site visit. This is not a beauty contest. This is not, are they good guys or bad guys? They're trying to solve a problem to their advantage. I get it. But it is to the disadvantage of the properties on Malvern. I'm very concerned about a precedent here because all of our older neighborhoods live along the commercial corridors, whether it's Palm Beach Lakes or it's Dixie or it's Olive or it's Broadway or it's Tamarind or all over the city. Our older neighborhoods have always coexisted with businesses. And to now, with a city who says, we've got a problem with the missing middle of housing, which we do. We are all for neighborhoods first, which is what they say. We are spot changing zoning from a residential zoning, and it's not even on the margin of the neighborhood, it's square in the middle of the 2 blocks, to general commercial, which is the baddest, biggest commercial zoning you can have, other than warehouses and what have you, sets a precedent. What about the houses that back up to the businesses on Belvedere or on South Dixie? So this, I'm encouraging either continuing or for some robust conversation, because this affects Broadway up in the north end. It really is wherever. Now, a lot of the historic districts are protected because they can't encroach on the historic properties in the historic neighborhood. But those poor neighborhoods that have not been able to protect themselves are out there bare. And staff can say, which I've heard a million times, each project is evaluated on its own merit. I'll say the Bristol and you say the next word. Every developer in town, every business person leverages one approval to the next. We all know it. I would strongly encourage either extending, having a continuance or voting it down. I think we really need to address this for the what's the fallout that's going to happen all over the city. Thank you.
Before I hear from you, I have Gary York and Catherine Stillen. And is Ms. Stillen here? Because there's some comments written I'll read if she doesn't wish to speak. I'm so sorry? Okay, let me read her comments then, please. Currently, traffic is disrupted by patrons of the car wash, and this is a viable solution. Traffic blockades are frequent, as this is a popular, respected business. Tried solutions, the best outcome for the community. And there's, Richard Chiatz, if you can also come forward. Is there anyone whose name I have not called who wishes to be heard? If so, come forward on one of the lecterns and we'll get through the rest. All right, sir, why don't you please proceed?
Sir, my name is Gary York, and I'm quite different from the car wash owners. I'm a property owner nearby, and different from many other people that came up here to support this, I live very close to this project. The people have come up this support. Many of them have identified their properties as being miles away, or certainly many blocks away. I'm right next to it. I bought my house in 1981, and it took me 20 years to pay it off, and I continuously improve it. It's everything I own. and it's the most important thing I own. And I'm here to beg you, please do not allow commercial incursion into my neighborhood. It's all I've got. And it's where I intend to live the rest of my life. I'm here in opposition to a $150 million corporation who has done a full court press to tell everyone how much we support them. The letters they refer to were not letters written by the people, but forms that my neighbors or nearby people were encouraged to fill out in support of this. These people don't live near the project, and they didn't write these letters. These are just forms that they signed, and I beg you, please do not go ahead with this. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir, come forward. I'm sorry, Mr. Pinsky, I think you were next. Why don't you go forward to this lectern?
Want me to go?
Please.
Okay, great, thank you. Mr. Chairman, Board, Richard Pinsky, 356 Valley Forge Road. I've lived or worked in the South End since 1974. I know this area very well. I am also president of the South End Neighborhood Association, which only means that I got the short straw to come here and speak on behalf of the Neighborhood Association. But I do want to commend the business. Yes, it's a great business, and they've been very accommodating in anything that the neighborhood has asked. But I wanted to convey to this board that we did not go about our support of this proposal for the rezoning and taking that property at Malvern and changing it from residential lightly. This was a deliberated, well thought out decision by the South End Neighborhood Association Board. We formed our own committee. We did our own due diligence. We contacted the city. We contacted the city traffic engineer, the planning department. We wanted to find out, were there other solutions? Yes, the applicant has conveyed that to you, that they have explored other possibilities. We didn't take their word for it. We contacted the city. We talked about entrances on Southern. You heard some of the proposals from the opposition tonight. We looked at all of that. There were certain factors that we looked at that did cause us to say we support it. One of the most difficult decisions was the residents you're hearing from tonight around Malvern. We are very protective of everything south of Southern. That is a residential bedroom community of West Palm Beach. Yes, we have the Dixie Corridor, but the South End lifestyle is an old traditional neighborhood, and that's what we wanted to preserve. At the same time, we knew we had a terrible situation going on the corner of Southern and Olive. The former car wash, I know Paulo, he's a personal friend. That business was only a fraction of what Mint Eco has done as a business model. So you can't compare the two. There's something new going on there. So here are the factors. That intersection of Southern and Olive is a commercial intersection. There's no doubt about it. You have a real estate agent on one side. We now have a gas station. You have the old corner store, which is going to be another commercial operation, Flanagan's. That is a commercial intersection. Mint Eco is just part of that commercial intersection. So when we were looking at the and if you don't, if you could give me one more minute. So there's a demarcation of
Excuse me.
There's a
He's president of an association. Our rules, excuse me, please. Excuse me, please. We have, when someone's speaking for a larger group, we've sometimes given a little more time, that's all.
Yeah,
That's
and
been
I'll make it brief.
practice throughout.
And I'll make it brief, Mr. Chairman, thank you. But there's a median in the road right at Malvern. That we felt was in addition to the commercial nature of the intersection, we felt as though that median was also a demarcation that could serve to still buffer. Everything that we asked Mint Eco to do, we also vehemently opposed any entrance or exit on Malvern. which they accommodated, and I think I'm glad the city agreed with them. We have asked for extra buffering. Every of the lighting on the south side of their property, they have changed the lighting. Everything we've asked to accommodate. This is not something that we are embracing as an optimum solution. It is the only solution. Please do not leave here tonight and relegate us to that traffic problem we have right now. You are our hope. You're our solution to fix that. We think we have the best. It's not 100% ideal, but it is the best solution.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, this gentleman here.
Richard Chinitz, 242 Cortez. I'm in favor. The only thing I would say to add is that when I feel like what was just addressed, when you look at that intersection and all the 7-Eleven, the beer bait and tackle, everything has a sort of similar entrance and exit, and I think this is very comparable to that, so I'm in favor of it for that reason.
Thank you. Ma'am, did you want to come forward and speak? Did you say? Please come forward.
Sandy Metkovich. You couldn't pronounce it.
I couldn't read. That's what you wrote, ma'am.
That's all right. I was in the 4th grade before I could pronounce it.
Work on the penmanship next. Okay.
I do not live in this area, but it was explained to me what's happening. I live in Spencer Lakes. It's private homes, 187 single-family homes. I built, I believe, in '86. Nice development. Love it there. Years ago, somebody from City Hall, we were talking about all these buildings going up. And they said to me, you know, Sandy, where you live, if Related wanted to come in and buy 3 homes, with the city's permission, and let's face it, the city, this should be called Related Land. They would tear down the buildings, and Related would put up a 30-story condominium, 30-story, much-needed business building. That scared the hell out of me. Just the thought that it could be done, okay? I live in a residential area, and I hope if Kentucky Fried Chicken wants to come in and buy a house and open up a stand, I hope people will back me. That's why I'm here today, backing these people that object to this. You're taking a residential and you're changing it to a commercial. You think it's going to stop there? Do you seriously think it's going to stop there? I was very impressed with the 2 binders they brought in, full of names with people that love this project and they approve of it. Is anybody going to check those binders? Anybody going to check those names, see if they really did sign them? Hypothetical. You won't answer me because nobody's going to check.
No, ma'am, we don't answer you because you're giving testimony now. It's not our role to respond to your questions. It's your chance to speak to us.
Right. I'm asking you not to do this. It's a residential neighborhood. It needs to stay residential neighborhood. There's enough commercial property around, they can rebuild. And I invite everybody in this room this coming Saturday, in fact, every Saturday at 4:30 in the afternoon in the 100th block of Clematis Street. This is where we feed the homeless of West Palm Beach. They have no home. And you want to let them tear down a duplex? Please think about it.
Thank you, ma'am. Was there anyone else? Was there anyone else whose name I did not call who wishes to be heard on this matter?
I'm sorry?
I'm speaking to the rest of the group, ma'am. Just to be sure everyone who wanted to speak has had that opportunity. Okay, thank you. You would want to reserve a little time if you could keep it brief? Okay, thank you. All right, that brings it then back to the board. And Jean, so you won't feel like you're the one who's making the final thing, I'll start with you.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's important to remind the public, what the role of the planning board is and what rules we have to follow. I think when we approve or deny something, it's based on a standard, and if we're going to recommend denial of something that's proposed by an applicant, we actually need to outline what standard they have not met. So I think that's important to remind people, because in many instances our hands are tied. We have a set of rules we have to follow, and if the applicant has checked the box, then it's really our job to follow those rules. And I think, if we have dissenting members, they can equally propose a motion for denial, but then by that right, they have to propose what standard the applicant has not met. So I think that's important to note. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Carla, thoughts? Okay. Peter, thoughts?
Yeah, it's always a difficult issue when you deal with traffic. I've been going through that site for over 10 years. I used to be a very avid bridge player at the St. Catherine's Greek Church. I was there several times a week, and the previous car wash owner did have traffic issues. Every time I went by there was always traffic. It's a part of nature of the operation. There's nothing you can do. I think that the improvements that are being proposed makes that whole operation more efficient. Traffic, theoretically, should be standing still much less time because they can process many, many cars than in the past. In terms of turning a residential property commercial, guys, it's parking in a driveway. It's not really commercial, okay? It's parking in a driveway. They've met all the necessary requirements according to the staff report. They've had traffic engineers, they work with the community to improve lighting, landscaping, privacy, sound, etc. They've gone a long way to try and be a good partner in that neighborhood. And for that reason, I think that the applicant has provided a very ingenious traffic flow and solution to the car wash.
Deborah, any thoughts to share?
Well, I look at it like as Peter said, they satisfied every standard, every condition, and I didn't see anything out of the way that should not be approved by this. And I think when I look at what the actual request is on here, they have met that to the letter of the law. Staff approves it. I thought the presentation was in-depth and thorough, and there was nothing left uncovered. So I do think that the investigation, I think all of the research added up to meeting what the standards and the conditions were. And I think that you had a good presentation.
Carl.
Yeah, I actually did want to make a couple of comments. I agree with the other board members who have spoken so far that they have, Mint Eco has made every effort to try to accommodate the neighborhood, especially to try to coexist in the neighborhood, as well as giving back to the area. I think it's easy for us to forget that City Place / the Square was a neighborhood. It's easy to forget some of these other locations were neighborhoods at one point. So so the argument of changing from residential to general commercial, that's progress. But I would say in this case,
Excuse me.
case,
Thank you.
and I lived in those neighborhoods myself. So I've been here my entire life, for 60 years. So we have seen the course of change here. And I will say to you, in the 60 years that I have been here, most of the time the businesses don't want to work with the neighborhood. This business does. It's unusual. So I understand, believe me, because I've lived it myself, I understand how some of you who are near or next door to this particular property, what you're experiencing, because I've experienced it myself. But I will tell you that it's rare to see a business jump through so many hoops and make so many accommodations to try to fit within the neighborhood, particularly in terms of that ingress and egress of traffic.
All right, will someone wish to make a motion?
Okay, onto the motion.
I move that the planning board recommend to the city commission approval of a two-part request by Josh Nichols of Schmidt Nichols on behalf of 316 Southern Brocco LLC and Malvern 511 Inc. for the following. 1, planning board case number 1934, a small-scale future land use map amendment to change the FLU designation of property consisting of approximately 0.175 acres located on 301 Malvern Road and multifamily MF to commercial. And part 2 is planning board case number 1934A, is a rezoning to change the zoning designation of property consisting of approximately 0.175 acres located at 301 Malvern Road from multifamily medium-density residential to general commercial. The motion is based upon the testimony presented at the hearing, along with the application submitted and the staff report, which constitute competent substantial evidence. The planning board hereby makes findings of fact that the application complies with the required standards of policy 1.15 of the City of West Palm Beach Comprehensive Plan and sections 9432A of the City of West Palm Beach Zoning and Land Development Regulations. In addition, this recommendation is made subject to conditions of approval contained in the staff report dated June 20th, 2023, and I move that these conditions are necessary to ensure compliance with the purpose and intent of the zoning land development regulations and consistent with the comprehensive plan of the City of West Palm Beach.
We have a motion. Have we a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, that brings us to planning board case numbers 1959 and 1960.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to clarify, was that motion for 1934 and 1934A?
Yeah.
Both?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're now at 1959 and 1960 planning board cases. See, Gene, you got to go first, and it didn't matter this time.
They're probably out there waiting for me.
No, from that first one. Wait. I'll walk you to your car.
Hi, good evening. This is Noor Darwish, the agent for the applicant for this project. I am here to request approval for two requests. One, it's a future land use change and a rezoning. The subject site that we're working with is located at 4801 South Dixie Highway. The applicant is looking to redevelop the site. However, there is an inconsistency issue, as the site, it has a split future land use and a split zoning. This is what the current site is, has a future land use. It has both of the commercial and a commercial east. We are looking to change that to have it as a commercial east over the entire site. The site has a split zoning as well. It has a single family and a neighborhood commercial. We are looking to have that consistent and have it as a neighborhood commercial over the entire site. Our projects certainly meet all the standards mentioned in policies 1.1.5 of the future land use element, as well as the 1.1.6 future land use element of the comprehensive plan. In addition to that, it also meets all the section element standards mentioned in section 9432A for the rezoning standards. And that concludes my presentation, if there's any questions.
I appreciate the brevity.
I thought so too.
Any questions of the applicant? just to be clear, it's actually, you would have more freedom, wouldn't you, with the commercial as opposed to the commercial east or not? I don't care, I was just curious. Usually people always want the other way around, but no? Okay, fair enough. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now can I hear from staff?
Is it different?
She says, I didn't like the last time I was up here.
It's okay. Ending on a good note's always a good thing.
That's it. Regine took over the board and said, I'm gonna make the decision. Just teasing.
So I'll make this short for you since Nora did a good job. So as she talked about, this is a unique lot that has two separate future land use and zoning. Total acreage is 60. Then I just did the surroundings of the property, which if you look, and staff is also recommending approval for both of them. Both case 1959 and 1960. And then this is just a summary of the existing and future. And then for the future land use, this is just a map of what it currently is right now. As you see, it's a weird shaped lot that part of it is commercial use. The western portion is commercial. The applicant is proposing it to match, so they have matching commercial use on it. So it will therefore look like that. And then this is just a summary of the levels of service. As you can see, the change in future land use will not drastically change drainage, water, wastewater, solid waste, traffic. And then for maximum development, as you see them changing it over the full property commercial use, it really doesn't alter any of their maximum development potential. It basically does stay the same. The only change would be that one dwelling unit potential down the line. But other than that, everything else is the same.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of staff? I don't think so. Would anyone from the public wish to be heard? Just one at a time, please. Cards, all right, thank you so much. We'll bring it back to the board. Does anyone have any concerns about this request?
No.
If not, I'll look for a motion.
Okay.
Me, again?
No, I think Deborah's ready to go.
Oh, go ahead.
She was all set to go, and then you kind of horned in her action there.
I move that the planning board recommend to the city commission approval of a two-part request by Josh Nichols of Schmidt Nichols on behalf of 418 South Dixie Highway for the following. Planning board case number 1959, a small-scale future land use FLU map amendment to change the FLU designation of property, consisting of approximately 0.60 acres and located at 4801 South Dixie Highway, from commercial C to commercial ECE. 2, planning board case number 1960, a rezoning to change the zoning designation of property consisting of approximately 0.60 acres and located at 4801 South Dixie Highway, from single-family SF14 to neighborhood commercial NC. The motion is based upon the testimony presented at the hearing, along with the application submitted and the staff report, which constitute competent, substantial evidence. The planning board hereby makes findings of fact that the application complies with the required standards of Policy 1.1.5 of the City of West Palm Beach Comprehensive Plan and Section 94-32A of the City of West Palm Beach Zoning and Land Development Regulations, ZLDRS. In addition, this recommendation is made subject to the conditions of approval contained in the staff report dated June 20th, 2023. I move that these conditions are necessary to ensure compliance with the purpose and intent of the zoning and land development regulations and consistency with the comprehensive plan of the City of West Palm Beach.
Second.
All right. We have a motion, and we have a second, I believe, right, Peter?
Second.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, we have 2 code revision cases left. We took care of one earlier. The first one is code revision case 2211.
Cameron Ennis on behalf of the applicant. And today we're presenting for you zoning text change application CR 22-11. And I've kept it pretty short, which I'm sure you can appreciate.
God bless you.
So here's our request tonight. We're requesting to change the zoning text for the citywide parking requirements, specifically for the warehousing facilities for families and small businesses use category. Currently, the parking code requires 1 space per 2,000 square feet up to 10,000, and 1 space per 4,000 square feet over 10,000, plus 1 space per 350 square feet for office space. What we're proposing is to modernize that and to do a per bay requirement. So instead of all that text there, we'll be doing 1 space per 200 storage bays with a minimum of 5 parking spaces. So some of our justification, just to remind you, warehousing for families and small businesses, that's the city's code language for self-storage. These parking requirements that the city currently has are outdated and excessive. Self-storage is a low traffic generator, and the existing code language also results in unused parking space. So that's less taxable land, more inefficient use of the land. You get more impermeable surfaces, which affects drainage, and also more heat island effect impacts. Other municipalities, we gave some examples to staff. Palm Beach County unincorporated has almost the same at 1 per 200 bays with minimum of 5, and Riviera Beach recently updated theirs to also be a per bay calculation. And with that, we respectfully request your recommendation for approval.
All right, any questions? And they're up. Let's hear from staff then.
Hello again, Planning Board. For the record, Kevin DeFrank, Senior Planner. And I will be brief and skip towards
It's a magic word.
staff's findings.
We're on in overtime here.
So as stated before, the applicant provided staff with minimum parking requirements from other municipalities, Palm Beach County and City of Riviera Beach, and essentially the proposed language reflects the minimum parking requirements for similar uses as stated by Palm Beach County. And staff finds that the proposed text amendment meets all the amendment standards found in the city's zoning and land development regulations. And based on the information provided by the applicant and the evidence gathered by staff, staff recommends an approval of CRC case number 22-11.
Any questions of staff?
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay. Please do. Please do.
I move that the planning board recommend to the city commission approval of code revision case number 22-11, a request by John Schmidt of Schmidt Nichols on behalf of 2500 North Florida Mango LLC for a text amendment to section 94-486, table, what is that, X15, thank you, -6, citywide parking requirements of the city's zoning and land development regulations relating to parking requirements for the warehousing facilities for families and small businesses use category. The motion is based upon the testimony presented at the hearing, along with the application submitted and the staff report, which constitute competent substantial evidence. The planning board hereby makes findings of fact that the application complies with the required standards in section 94-32A of the City of West Palm Beach zoning and land development regulations.
All right, we have a motion. Have we a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, Angela, you have 2 minutes on your last one, and we'll continue it to the next meeting. Can you pass this down? You're down to a minute and a half. Keep going here.
Angela Van, Planning and Zoning Administrator. This is a city-initiated request for tax amendment to section 94-302, which deals our fence hedges and our wall height to prohibit fences, walls on the east side of Flagler Drive for non-contiguous residential properties east of Flagler Drive. I'm gonna skip this and get to so you can understand the,
Absolutely.
when portions of Flagler Drive was constructed in the 1930s, some of the original homeowners' property was split on both sides of Flagler Drive, leaving the homeowner with land, as shown here, on the east side of Flagler Drive. So it's to the intercoastal waterway. This allows the city to construct Flagler Drive and the linear trail system you see here, that's shown here. And we've maintained this area since back in the 1930s. And the property owners, what is meant basically, a lot of the property owners in some areas of the city, in the north and south end, just like the properties off of the dock. Some of them have upland lands that's part of their property that they basically pay taxes on. City right-of-way goes back a little bit beyond the sidewalk, and then property owner may have about 20 feet, and then the city has an additional 2 feet between that property and the seawall, so we can get back there and maintain the seawall. And again, this is showing the north end, where you can see a small portion of the properties in the north end actually own the property that's basically on the east side of Flagler Drive. Most of it's east of the sidewalk. In some areas, we even have an easement, particularly in North Flagler, we have an easement where the sidewalk actually goes through their properties. So the city recently received an inquiry about installing a fence on the east side of Flagler Drive on one of these properties. And the city felt in order to maintain overall character and the vista of the waterfront along Flagler Drive, and also to ensure the access to maintain Flagler Drive and the right-of-way and the seawall, and the city will propose this text amendment to make it clear that we are prohibiting walls, fences, in this area. And then basically the code talks about it's just prohibiting east of Flagler Drive, making it clear that it's not properties who on the east side of Flagler Drive have contiguous riparian rights, because they basically just back up to their backyards, just for those who basically split Flagler Drive and have properties on the west side and own the uplands area. So that's what basically this code text amendment is doing.
Okay.
And the staff, if it complies with all the requirements of section 94-32, and the staff recommends approval.
It seems like a good idea, right? I mean, we don't want to wall off the water view. We're going to have the docks that are going to do that.
But the docks.
Can you go back to the previous slide?
Okay, sure.
Angela, there's a typo, it's making me crazy. The last sentence, gating or fencing on docks east of the seawall shall be, not be prohibited?
Well, east of the seawall should not.
Shall be, not
yeah,
be?
Yeah.
Okay,
take the B
can
out.
you change that?
Yes.
Are we ready for a motion?
At this hour, I'm impressed. that you picked up on that.
A former English teacher. Okay, so no questions of staff?
Okay, no questions of staff. This was your evening tonight, by the way. How many did you have?
Oh, and here's a question.
Oh,
I know, you pushed it tonight.
Did they give you a volume discount?
Yeah, really. He wants to come here like once every 8 to 9 months.
Is there any pending
Take care.
litigation?
No.
Okay.
I think it's great, don't you?
Oh, God, yes. Oh, yeah, I'm very familiar with the action back there. So I'd like to make a motion. I move the planning board recommend to the city commission approval of code revision case number 23-03, a city-initiated request for a text amendment to section 94-302, fences, hedges, and walls of the city of West Palm Beach zoning and land development regulations to prohibit fences, walls on the east side of Flagler Drive for non-contiguous residential property east of Flagler Drive, where the primary residence is west of Flagler Drive. The motion is based upon the testimony presented at the hearing, along with the application submitted and the staff report, which constitute competent, substantial evidence. The planning board hereby makes findings of fact that the application complies with the required standards in section 94-32 of the City of West Palm Beach zoning and land development regulations.
All right, we have a motion, have we a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes unanimously. We move to other business, unfinished business, new business. We stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone.